respect to the late head of legal in SABC, respect. Just for 1 minute, stand up for a moment. Thank you very much. This morning we were very few hours to finish our business before we go to the sitting. Meaning, therefore, we won't spend time. We don't want speeches. We want those who will be instructed by the minister after I've opened the meeting to just go straight to the actual issues. No missions, no mandates. We know all those things. We just want to get into business. And unfortunately, I will have to manage it such that at 1 o'clock we're out of here, or the latest 1:30. Just the usual issues for the meeting. I don't have any apology. Oh, Mrs. Van Dijk is on study leave. Mr. Madisha in other meetings. Ms. Nevot Drachen, there is no reason provided. Well, we'll have to, members, to go straight to the Department of Communications Minister to lead the discussions in relation to the presentation. We'll start with ICASA, and then after ICASA it will be SABC. I'll keep it as short as that so that we are on point. Thank you very much. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, colleagues, honorable members. We really appreciate this opportunity this morning to come and present, firstly, the ICASA Q1 report. I would first request the introduction, Chair, if that's acceptable. We'll do once introduction so that even when we come to the presentation by SABC, we don't start the introductions, so that we are very clear who is here before we can even proceed. I know you know DM. I don't know if you want DM to be introduced. Perhaps, I'll start with the acting chair of ICASA, and then the team that is behind me as well.
Good morning, Chair and members of the body, the Portfolio Committee on Communications. I have with me here my colleagues, the CEO, Willington Wepe, and the CFO, who will deal with the financial aspect. The operational aspect will be dealt by the CEO. And in that process, as we present this...
Introduction first. Introduction so that we move.
Oh, I've already introduced.
Yeah, we'll come back to just introduction.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson.
Oh, okay. For formal reasons, I just made an assumption, and I'm sorry about that. I want to apologize. My name is Paris Moshile, the acting chairperson of ICASA and councillor at the same time.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. My name is Wellington Mwepe. I'm the CEO at ICASA.
Morning, honorable members. My name is Tabo Matawan, CFO of ICASA.
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Bongo Musa Makatine, the chairperson of the SABC board.
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Nomsa Piliso, the acting GCO of the SABC.
Good morning, Chair. John Mattison, member of the SABC board.
Good morning, honourable members. Phoebe Potgieter-Gubule. I'm the Deputy Chair of the SABC Board.
Morning, honourable members. My name is Tabile Dlamini, the acting CFO at SABC.
Good morning, Chair and honourable members. My name is Besi Tugwana. I'm the acting COO at the SABC.
Morning, Chair and honourable members. My name is Tabiso Titi. I'm the Chief of Staff to Minister Ngubani. Minister Kubai Ngubani.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and honourable members. My name is Basani Baloy. I'm the Acting Director General for the Department of Communications.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Sandy Lene. I'm the advisor to the Minister.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Dr. Rufuna Marwada. I'm the advisor to the Minister.
Thank you very much. Kune phone la. Somebody lost the phone. Okay, thanks, Minister. Over to you.
Thank you. Oh, okay. The rest we not introduce. It's a huge team. Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say, I think the others, we've got the spokesperson of SABC here as well, I think other colleagues, and head of DM's office and the team in the office of the DM. Just to indicate, Chair, that where we are sitting in terms of ICASA, you would know that because the team has been recently here in terms of presenting during your process of BRRR. One, we are noting the progress that is made by the committee. And maybe let me just indicate that in terms of designating a full-time chair, we'll be doing that in the coming few weeks so that we have a chairperson full-time to ICASA. As you know, currently we have the interim chair assisting us. We are reporting this point, Chair, having appointed as ICASA, you would have noted, the CEO of the entity. I think that's one of the critical issues. And it's somebody that has been in the organization. And for us, it gives comfort for continuity and managing things. Where we are sitting again, Chair, the issue of performance of ICASA, I think through the presentation you will note, we're sitting fairly comfortable in being able to make the progress that we want. Obviously, we're sitting with almost 72.7% of achieved targets for this quarter. And I think that's fairly comfortable. Obviously, we would want to improve more in the coming quarters. And reasons will be given in critical areas where we've not been able to achieve targets. I think where I'm sitting, Chair, with the performance of the entity, I think we are not seeing a regression. Obviously, we are seeing some improvements in the work, and we think we'll continue in the work that is being done. Even taking from where I come from, used to be in the committee, I think quite a number of work that has been done to strengthen the work of ICASA. We see that coming through, having looked at the work now, being able to monitor even the work around telecoms, performance, appointment of engineers and buying of equipments. I think with more resources going forward, we should be able to get ICASA fully into its capacity to be able to fulfill its mandate. And obviously we can't push that much because we know the fiscal constraints that we have in terms of the work, but, and Chair, with your support as the committee, making sure that we have a full complement of the council to be able to deal with this. One of the things, Chair, that we will be prioritizing is to sort out the issues around performance of councillors. I know it has been an issue that has been raised previously by the committee in terms of performance agreements and work, because we're dealing with issues of full-time councillors here. So we have started the engagement with the team as the department to see how best can we ensure that there is value for money that the state is paying to the full-time councillors. But equally, part of the issues that they've raised with me is around the salary brackets, which we are looking on the basis of the work that is done by the team led by the Deputy President on state-owned entities, remunerations and performance. So we have agreed as a team that we'll do that in the confines of what the recommendations are in that area. So, Chair, without wasting that time, I think I'm fairly comfortable where we are sitting and will be willing to take questions from members once the time comes in terms of the performance of Q1 of the entity. And I'll give, in this moment, I'll give over to the team led by the interim chair to deal with issues.
Thanks, Minister.
Okay, morning once more. We're here to present the first quarter report. And in that respect, in as far as the context has been set by the Minister, we're here to give you the facts that more or less confirm the assurance that we have provided in terms of our progress in this regard. We do have challenges one way or the other, but I think we are improving from time to time. So in this particular respect, I have the CEO of ICASA, who will deal with operational issues, and then the CFO will deal with financial issues, which are core to the running of the organization, and to find out if we are fulfilling our mandate in terms of the operational aspects, and that in itself will be demonstrated very clearly in this performance that I'm sure where questions would be referred to us, we will be able to answer them to the best of our abilities. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Acting Chairperson Mashile. Good morning once again, Chairperson and honorable members. Chair, I'm just waiting for, all right, I think we are on. I will not spend too much time on the mandates and the area of focus, as well as the functions. I think the committee is fairly aware of our mandate. Can I proceed? So the first part of the presentation basically presents a summary of our Q1 performance. The slide that summarizes our performance is headed statistical data. And I think the one thing that I would like to highlight for members there is firstly the divisions that have achieved 100% of their targets, which is corporate services, human resources, as well as legal. And the committee will also note that there is a program there in respect of which we had no deliverables for the quarter. That's at a high level, Chair, a summary of how we have performed. We had 33 targets for the quarter. We achieved 24. We did not achieve 9. We'll explain the details as the presentation proceeds. We've also provided an indication, Chair, for the benefit of the committee in terms of how each of the programs contribute to the different strategic outcome-orientated goals. We have 5 strategic outcome-orientated goals, and the different programs, as per the target set, contribute in different ways to those goals. That's summarized, Chair, in the two slides. In terms of the overall performance, Chair, the Minister has already alluded to this fact. We performed at 72.7% for the quarter in terms of the targets that we have set for ourselves. And we thought it would be useful just to take the committee through a journey of where we come from. In the next slide, Chair, you will note that we have provided details of how we performed in Q1 of 2015-16, in Q1 of 2016-17, as well as Q1 of the current financial year. And that is just to illustrate, Chair, that we are sitting in an upward trajectory, and we're hoping that we will stabilize the organization performance in the higher 70s. In terms of the achievements per program, the first program is administration, and under this program, there's a couple of sub-programs. As I indicated, corporate services achieved all of their targets for the quarter. So we had 2 targets there, which related to membership of international forum in terms of ICASA's mandate to support the government in international bodies, as well as the establishment of the 8th additional office for ICASA. The quarterly targets set in respect of those 2 were achieved. In terms of human resources, again, as I indicated, we achieved 100% of the targets. We had 2 targets there. The one related to minimizing or keeping our vacancy rate at lower than 9%, and we achieved that target. We also achieved the target relating to the training and development strategy for the organization. An internal audit, we had a target to issue 3 tracking reports, and these are the reports through which we track our performance in terms of matters raised by the AG, as well as by internal audit that require corrective measures from our side. We achieved that target. We also achieved the target relating to the issuing of the combined assurance report. For legal risk and CCC, the targets in that program were also achieved. In this program, the main target related to the provision of support in terms of legal advice to the council committees that are responsible for executing ICASA's mandate, that is in relation to formulating regulations and even defending the organization in review proceedings that may be brought against the decisions we have taken. The second program is licensing. We had a couple of targets relating to improving our organizational performance, and this relates to the speed within which we process all the applications from various industry players. And the applications could relate to type approval, the applications could relate to requests for additional number and resources, the applications could also be about the renewal, amendment, and transfer of licenses. So in respect of all of those targets, we met the targets that we set for Q1. In the programs relating to region, we also had a couple of quarterly deliverables in that program. We amongst the most critical ones was the target for us to roll out services to the regional offices. So we're going through a phase in terms of which we would like to decentralize some of the administrative functions from the headquarters to all the various regional offices in the country. So the target we set for ourselves in that regard related to the decentralizing of some of the functions relating to the issuing of licenses. We achieved that target. We also set a target to conduct type approval inspections, and this entails going to different outlets and in fact verifying that the devices that are sold in those outlets have been type approved, and we achieved that target. In compliance and consumer affairs, the main mandate in this division is resolution and investigation of consumer complaints. We have a target, annual target, that we must resolve 85% of all the complaints we receive. In Q1, we had set that target at 70%, and we achieved that target. We also, through this program, deal with verification and review of all the interconnection and facilities leasing agreements that are concluded by industry players. And the regulatory requirement is that all these agreements must be filed with us, and we must then assess whether they are consistent with the regulations as prescribed. And we set ourselves a target that 80% of those agreements ought to be reviewed, and we fulfilled that target. We also had a target around monitoring of licensees, and in this respect, we said we would then produce a quarterly report just to assess how we are doing in terms of meeting the ultimate annual target in respect of the number of licensees we need to monitor. And that target was also achieved. The next section of the presentation, Chair, deals with the main areas of non-achievement for the quarter. And this focuses on those programs where there was less than 100% achievement. Under administration, the main area to highlight relates to finance. So we had two targets there. The one related to collection of license fees. We did not achieve the target that we had set ourselves for the quarter. And the reason why we couldn't collect all the money that we had hoped, or we had set ourselves the target of collecting, is purely a timing difference, Chair. The payment of license fees is aligned to licensees' financial years. And when you look at some of the bigger licensees that we collect from, their annual, their financial years are not aligned within the Q1 period. So we will collect the bulk as we progress through the year. The second area where we didn't achieve, Chair, relates to the payment of invoices within 30 days, the payment of suppliers within 30 days. We didn't achieve this target, and this is mainly due to the fact that Q1 being immediately after the end of the past financial year, we had a whole lot of invoices that we needed to process, and we therefore fell behind in that regard. One of the things that we're doing now is to ensure, or rather to impress upon the divisional executives who are the customers effectively, or the consumers of the services that are provided by our suppliers, not to delay acceptance or acceptance of the deliverables, so that we can then get the process going for timeous processing of invoices. Chair, under licensing, we had one area where, even though it's reflected as non-achievement, in terms of the processing of applications for amendment of individual licenses, we have 180 days in which to process those applications. None of the applications fell due in Q1, and as a result, there was really nothing to deliver. All the applications that we received fell to be processed beyond the Q1 period in terms of the prescribed timelines. Under policy research and analysis, as I had indicated earlier, Chair, there were no deliverables for the quarter. Most of the targets that are set under this program are annual targets, and this is really due to the nature of the work that is done in this program. But just for the benefit of the members, the fact that there are no deliverables in the quarters does not mean that there is no work being undertaken. In respect of each target and each project, there is an underlying project plan with clearly set out milestones, and we continuously monitor how we are performing in terms of working towards the annual target. Under engineering and technology, we did not meet the target we had set ourselves for the quality of service monitoring assessments that we intended to do. We had completed the measurements in Mpumalanga as well as in Limpopo, but the reports were not ready. And the primary reason why we fell behind is because in that quarter, we had a challenge with the equipment. So some of our equipment needed repairs, and they took longer to be repaired. And as a result, we couldn't conclude the measurements and the report within the quarter. In terms of the mitigation, the repairs have been completed. We have also started a procurement process for additional equipment, and we're hoping that overall, we will catch up with all the measurements that needs to be done for the financial year. Under regions, we did not achieve the target relating to the inspection of, or rather the investigations of high site. And the primary reason for this, Chair, is that there is a time lag between the time when the investigations and the inspections are done and the finalization of the reports and the loading of the evidence on the system. So we could not, as of the end of the reporting period, provide the evidence in terms of the reports of all the investigations. So we will, I think, implement measures to make sure that this shortfall is corrected and that we do not allow an unnecessary delay between the loading of the reports following the actual conducting of the work and the investigations. In compliance and consumer affairs, the main area of non-achievement relates to establishment of the Consumer Advisory Panel. In the quarter in question, we could not finalize the call for nomination for the appointment of members of the Consumer Advisory Panel. This is the panel that will advise ICASA Council on all consumer protection related matters. But the process has since advanced. The advertisements have been issued, and the CAP will be constituted by the end of this quarter, and it will start executing its mandate with effect from Q4. In terms of financial performance for the quarter, Chair, this is a summary of how we are performing in respect of the budgets allocated to each of the programs. I think the members will note that we have only spent 21% of the budget that was allocated to be spent for Q1. And primarily this is due to the fact that in the Q1 period, this is the time when we initiate most of our procurement processes. And often there are delays here and there that results in us not actually committing the money that needs to be committed in that quarter. But we're hoping that there will be a lot of improvements as we concluded those processes, and now the work by the service providers will then be undertaken and the billing will commence. Chair, the next section deals with an update on the matters that were previously raised by the committee during the last oversight visit. We thought we should highlight just a couple of the critical items. Chair, the members will recall that after the visit, we were requested to provide a detailed report to the committee on the various issues that were raised, as well as what we are doing about those issues. And the members will also recall that most of the issues related to industrial relations in the organization. So in terms of the update, the one issue that was raised quite strongly with the members was around the settlement of the strike that we had last year. We had a settlement agreement that was concluded in August. From management side, we executed on the settlement agreement. However, the employees and the union have raised issues with the manner in which we have implemented the agreement. So there is a dispute about whether we have implemented the agreement properly and fully. And that dispute has progressed and it's now at the Labour Court. But whilst awaiting that process to unfold, Council has taken a view that we need to continue to explore different ways to resolve this matter. And Council has made an offer, which we think is reasonable to the employees to settle that dispute in particular. And that offer is open for the union and the employees' consideration until the 15th of November. So we're hoping that if it's accepted, we can then put the matter of the industrial relations of last year to bed and focus on the work that needs to be undertaken in the organization. The second issue, Chair, is just an update in terms of trade union relations. The members will recall that at the time when the strike took place, the employees had no trade union representing them. They have now joined a trade union, and we are in the process of normalizing the recognition agreement with the union. There is, however, one area in respect of which there is a dispute relating to the settlement agreement. The other issue, Chair, relates to the organizational structure. There were a lot of concerns raised by employees about the effects of the 2014 realignment of the organization. So Council has taken a view that we have now had 2 years to assess where the structure works well and where it doesn't work well. And Council has asked us now to do a reassessment of the structure and come up with proposed adjustments in respect of areas where there are things that we can see are not working well that needs correction. So we will conclude this process by the end of the current financial year, following the extensive consultation we will undertake with all the employees affected, as well as the representative union. The other issue relates to the vacancies in the organization. I think, Chair, just to emphasize again that the current vacancy rate is at 8.7%, which is below the 9%, but we're hoping to bring this down to under 7% by the end of the financial year. And we've also given an indication of the vacancies at senior management and executive level. The senior manager positions, Chair, the 2 at the top in licensing and type approval will be filled in the next week, because the process is advanced. What's left is for us to just confirm the appointments. The senior manager, office of the chairperson, will be advertised by the end of next week. As regard the matters raised by the AG and what we need to focus on in terms of the audit action plan, I think, Chair, one of the main areas that has been consistently raised over the years by the AG is around the quality of our performance information. So one of the tasks that Council has highlighted is that we need to implement control measures, even at the CEO level, to ensure that there is adequate and thorough review of all the indicators as set out in the strategic plan and the annual performance plan, to ensure that we comply with the prescribed rules. So that's the one area that we will fix, and I hope that when we table our plan for the next financial year, the committee will see a lot of improvements in that regard. We've also had a number of issues around irregular expenditure and wasteful expenditure, and in this regard, we have noticed that the management team, not just the supply chain management staff, but the rest of the leadership and the management team need to be trained on a regular basis, and workshops needs to be held on a regular basis in respect of the supply chain requirements, as well as all the treasury instruction notes that get published on an ongoing basis, to ensure that we spread the obligation for compliance to the people that actually do the sourcing of the work that we procure. Finally, Chair, we have made timeless payment of suppliers a key part of our organizational annual performance plan, specifically as a target for the finance division. And we're also holding divisional heads accountable in terms of the work that gets delivered to them, because until the work is accepted, the processing and the payment of the invoices cannot be undertaken. So it often happens that the delays with the payment of the invoices, even though we always like to point to finance, it's not really where the problem lies. The problem lies in the rest of the organization where the work is actually delivered, but there are delays in confirming the acceptance. Chair, this is our presentation in terms of how we look for Q1, and I'll pause here, Chair, and allow members to raise questions, and the chairperson and the CFO will then assist with answering.
Okay, thank you very much. You have taken a long time. Yes. Thank you very much. I'll now allow members to ask questions. Honorable Davis.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I've got a few questions that I need to put to you. The first one is based on something that was said at the interviews for the ICASA Council that we had recently. One of the candidates said that there was a monopoly on the pay TV space, resulting in exorbitant prices for DSTV. I'd like to ask you, what plans does ICASA have, if any, to break this monopoly? Is there any plans for you to look into the high costs of the pay TV service? My second question relates to page 3 of the quarterly report and the underspend that you mentioned of 30 million rand, or 27.5% for the quarter. You say that this is a result of procurement processes. So my question is, why not take this into account when you're setting the targets? If you know that there's going to be an issue with the procurement in this quarter, why not take that into account when you set the targets? Then on page 7 of the report, it mentions that the Policy Research and Analysis Program does not have any targets planned for this quarter. Why is this? Why are there no targets planned for that particular program for this quarter? And is this not the program that should be investigating the high costs of data, as was pledged by the previous minister? And in that regard, what progress has been made in the investigation into the high costs of data? And when do you expect that investigation to be completed? Then we welcome the cost containment measures that you've set out in your report following the budgets, or the MTBPS speech by the finance minister. He painted a pretty dire picture. So we do welcome those cost containment measures. And I see that catering outside of training and workshops will now be limited to the council and the exco. In other words, catering will be limited to the employees of ICASA who can actually afford to buy their own food, which I find rather strange. Why not limit catering for senior staff as well as junior staff? Why do senior staff get special treatments at ICASA when it comes to catering? Then my next question relates to a parliamentary question I put to the minister in October, and I received the reply 3 weeks ago. I want to remind you of Section 6A of the ICASA Act, which says that the minister must, in consultation with the National Assembly, establish a performance management system to monitor and evaluate the performance of the chairperson, councillors, and the council individually and collectively. Now, Minister Kubai did mention this at the outset. But my question to you is, when I asked this in the parliamentary question, my reply was from the previous minister was that this performance agreement had not been put in place. Now, this is in contravention of the ICASA Act. There's a section of the Act which is dedicated to this. So, in other words, there's a breach of the law that has occurred here. This is a very, very serious matter, which is why I suspect the minister wanted to take it head on in this meeting. But it is a very serious matter that the law has been breached in this way. Can you please tell me why the performance agreements were not signed? Who is responsible for this breach in the law? When will the National Assembly be consulted as required by the law? I didn't hear the minister mention any consultation process with the National Assembly, so I'd like you to please shed light on that. And when can we expect the performance agreements to be put in place as required by the law? And I think we really need to get some very clear answers on that today. Then my last question, Chair, is just relating to our previous meeting with ICASA on the 5th of October, where the matter of the former CEO's resignation arose. It emerged that he was suspended for sexual harassment pending a disciplinary hearing, but that he left ICASA to join the private sector before that disciplinary hearing could be conducted. My question, it also emerged, and this is important, that he was given a payout to leave ICASA. My question is, why was he given a payout when he left ICASA voluntarily? Why could you just not let him go off into the good night?
Maybe I must not allow you to continue on that one.
What?
Because you'll recall that we requested a report from ICASA. I think there were 2 reports, and FPB. And that report is with the members now. It will come back for discussion in the meeting. So hold that one on. I can see that Honorable Van Dam doesn't have the report. I don't know why.
Chair,
but
I
the
don't believe
report
I have
was
a copy of the
circulated.
report.
But that matter won't be dealt with here and now. It will be dealt with in a meeting of its own. So I'm saying there is that report. get that report, Honorable Davis, get that report, Honorable Van Dam. So the office will...
Chairperson, sorry, could you please show us the report that you're referring to?
Are you done?
Sorry, no, Chair, I would just like to...
No, I'm not saying they cannot respond, but I'm saying this committee requested reports, 2 reports. And those reports were sent. My impression is that we're given those reports, they will be programmed in a meeting of its own. I was just giving information so that we don't pursue that report. Very soon that report will be tabled to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm a bit confused as to what you're saying. You're saying there is a report, or are you saying there's going to be a report?
There is a report that was circulated.
Are you saying that we should be in possession of this report?
Yes.
And can you just confirm with the Secretariat that all the members of the committee received the report? Because my colleague and I don't recall receiving such a report.
I'll deal with that.
Okay.
Because I do have the report.
But Chair, in the absence of the report, I just have a very simple question that I would like to have answered here. And there's no reason why the report should prevent me from asking the question here. My question is, why was the former CEO given a payout when he resigned voluntarily? And how much was the payout that was given to him? If you could just confirm the amount that was given to him. And thirdly, were criminal charges laid against him? And if not, why were criminal charges not laid against him? Obviously, sexual harassment is not a victimless crime, and we must stand up for victims of sexual harassment. So we would expect criminal charges to have been laid against the former CEO in this case. So please, can you just give us a progress report on that? Thank you.
The report will be, if you don't have the report, it will be circulated. And then that matter won't be dealt with in this meeting. It will be dealt with in the meeting where we table the report. That is the ruling. That is the ruling. Other members want to raise questions. Honorable Tsedi.
Thanks, Chair. I think you are right to suggest that if there is a report that is still coming to the committee, let's wait for the appropriate time for that report to come, and we will process it accordingly. I think you are right, because it would be wrong perhaps to want to deal it in a manner that is now being suggested, which is likely to be problematic. But I have a few issues, Chair, just to seek clarity. Maybe let me start by appreciating the presentation from ICASA. The first one relates to membership to international fora. And when I look at that indicator, there is not very clear exactly what is it that you had wanted to achieve at the end of the year, and what is it that you have achieved so far with regard to that particular indicator. Is it a renewal of a membership, renewal of a membership, or joining of a membership? What is it specifically that you want to achieve with regard to that particular indicator? I'm a bit worried with some few indicators where the target does not necessarily amount to 100%. And I'll give you an example of an indicator which talks to receiving and assessing of cases. And you are saying after you have received these cases, at the end of the financial year, you want to address 65% of the cases. And my question is, why not 100%? So to me, it means right from the beginning, you anticipate a situation where you are not likely to achieve a particular set target. That's why I have a bit of a problem. To me, you are now planning to fail right from the beginning, unless if it can be clarified, why not 100% assessing of the cases that you will have received. The same applies to the issue of the license within 60 days. the processing of radio spectrum license within 60 days. And your target there, I see, you are targeting to have attend to that particular indicator. 83% achievement at the end of the financial year. The same question applies. Why not 100% and 83% as you have illustrated there? Because to me, I would have anticipated a situation what you are saying in terms of processing the radio spectrum licenses within 60 days. Your take is to achieve everything. And if there is a gap, you'll then be able to outline at the end of the financial year why there was that gap. The last one relates to vacancy rate. 9%, you want to have reduced the vacancy rate from 9 to 7 at the end of the financial year. And my take is, obviously, we're talking about positions that have been budgeted for, unless if I can be clarified. Why should it be a problem to want to achieve 100% closing of the vacancy rate, unless if there are other processes that you think by the end of the financial year you might not have achieved them. So I will need clarity with regard to those few issues, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify the issue of consultants again, I've seen huge sums of money paid on consultants. Welcome, Honorable Mbenda. I don't know the member next to you. If I knew the name, I would welcome him. Or you better take the back seat if you're not a member. Otherwise, I'll have to introduce you as a member. Honorable Kalago, do you have a question? Not now. Honorable.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to just back my colleague here. If there is a report and it has been made available to the Chair, I think it should be made available to us too. If Timogosi has it on his laptop right now, all he has to do is press the forward button and we'll have that report. And I also don't think it's right to say that it will be dealt with in some way in the near future in a committee meeting that hasn't been scheduled yet. Right now, our agenda for the rest of the year has been set. So if we deal with it, it will be dealt with somewhere next year. And we think it's an urgent matter that needs to be dealt with now. So if the report is there, we can read it quickly, and Mr. Mashile and Mr. Mwepe can answer those questions. I don't think there's a need for that to be kept under wraps and dealt with somewhere down the line. And also, please, can that FPB report be made available to us? We've requested it quite some time ago, so can both those reports please be forwarded to us by Timingos.
Any other member who wants to ask a question? Responses. As I said, the issue of the two reports will be dealt with, so don't go there.
Thanks, Chair. I think we appreciate the questions that have been raised by members. Let me start with the issue of, indeed, the reports have been tabled, Chair, and will be guided by you on how we deal with it. Let me just start with the issue of performance agreements raised by Honorable Davis. Yes, indeed, there are no performance agreements currently in place, hence I flagged it as a critical matter for the councillors to be able to sign. And the information we've been receiving as ministry, or that we received, was that there was disagreements between the department and council. And that we have made it a priority. Indeed, we do acknowledge what ICASA Act is saying. That's why we've made it a priority. What we can commit, Chair, is that we'll make sure that this is concluded as soon as possible. And my issue was that we need to conclude. The team has put together the template or the performance agreements. They have been sent to council by last week for councillors to look at, because remember, performance agreement has to be signed by both parties. So they need to have an input before we can come and consult with Parliament. So once we are at a position where we are in agreement between ourselves and as the department and council, we'll definitely come back. On the issue of the former CEO, Chair, that's what I'm saying in terms of will be guided by you. Just to indicate, the report was tabled, indicating what has happened. There were negotiations between the two parties, lawyers, between the lawyer of the former CEO and the lawyers of council, that resulted in that settlement that member is indicating. And indeed, the payout is almost around $1 million that was paid out. It's gross around that amount. After tax, it went down to almost around 500,000. Thanks, Chair. I think I'll allow, because the other things are more around issues in terms of the targets with the CEO and the Chair. Indeed, I think the issue around monopoly, Chair, and the role of ICASA. ICASA's role is very clear, and there is an investigation that ICASA is doing in terms of pay TV. But I think I'll allow them to work on it. But quite a number of work that needs to be done and carried out. I mean, the issue of spending as well, we need to take cognizance of the fact that it's a Q1 report, yes, and it links to what Honorable Sedi was saying. When you put targets, we also, if you look at how you put performance targets, you break them down in quarters, because overall they contribute to an annual performance contract. Maybe we can be guided by the committee when we present the next annual plans to say this is what should be in the issues. Vacancy rate as well, I think this is a fairly good, yes, we hear what Honorable Member is saying in terms of having to fill the vacancies, all of them. But equally, we need to take cognizance that in terms of public service, there is a particular percentage that say your vacancy rate should be within this percentage. And so far as ICASA is doing, is performing very well in terms of that, because we are below what is deemed as a norm of what must be a vacancy rate as acceptable. I think other things will be, I think that the CEO will go into detail in terms of the consultant. But Chair, ICASA in terms of its responsibility and mandates, it's difficult to avoid consultants because you have particular work that you commission at a particular time. When you do that work, they can give in detail of this quarter which areas of consultants you do. But I thought, let me just clarify, because it's something that will pop out. Because when you have a particular work that you commission as ICASA, they might find that certain skills or what you need, you do not have within the institution. And because you do not need them for the whole year, for example, or for permanently, you need them for particular investigation that you are doing, then you will have to source that, get them to do the work, and then therefore leave. So that's why you'd have issues of consultants coming in an institution such as ICASA, because there is no way that you can constantly have all the technical expertise that you need within the institution. I thought, let me just clarify such issues and allow the team to go into detail on other operational matters.
In response to all the questions that were asked, I'll just touch on some of the aspects that I think I can articulate better on. With regard to the question of a monopoly in pay TV, we definitely have got a project underway in which we use Chapter 10 of the Competition Act, around which there is a lengthy process wherein you go to define the market and determine whether there is a significant player, even though it is obvious to some people that, no, here is a significant market and do your own thing. The law requires us to undertake processes. And if we fail in processes, these matters are referred to the court. And the court, because not of the substance, what process did you undertake to achieve what you have? If we have missed out in terms of consultation, in terms of all the stakeholders, and we become deterministic, that in itself is a failing. And therefore, please bear with us that we are confined by regulation, legislation, to undertake processes of consultation, and it's a toing and froing until such time we arrive at determining the significant market power and then impose pro-competitive measures in that regard. I can just put it in those terms. But we already have set up a project to undertake this aspect that is referred to. So I think it is how the legislation is written as to how ICASA operates. It's unlike the Competition Act. The Competition Act is ex post. They can just look at it and say, hey, you are charging too high, or there is a monopoly, and move in. In our case, the law constrains us to, you must undertake a consultation process before you arrive reasonably at a conclusion. So I think that maybe should be clearly understood if the Act is properly read. I also like to say that the PRA, even though no targets are shown, it is work in progress. In other words, sometimes not easy to put in a quarterly target, because that target is sort of like very difficult to achieve, knowing full well that there are certain milestones that you have to achieve, certain actions that you're going to undertake. And sometimes quarterly reports are definitely not relating to how a project is undertaken. No project that is conceivable has got quarterly reports. Sometimes the report will come a week after the quarter. Then you have missed out on that quarter. But it will then be reported in the subsequent quarter, because your Gantt chart indicates that this, instead of being a report in June, will only be in July. But then the confinement is then the challenge. How do we then can say we've not achieved that when the actual work that needs to be done takes more than a quarter? So in this particular respect, I think it should be understood by people who have undertaken program management that it's not only in quarterly sessions that some things can be achieved. In this particular regard, where we have shown that there are no achievement, there is work in progress. We could have indicated that we've done 97% of this. But according to the AG, says you either achieve or you don't know. Don't tell me about 87% of the work that you have done in that. It should be 100%. Then you will call it. All of those achievements are 100% achievement. But the others that may not have been achieved, actually, they could have been 87, 91, 93, and not 100. Therefore, they are not recorded as such, because according to the AG, it's either achieved or not. It's a sort of like a 1 or a 0 type of thing. So the high cost of data in terms of investigation definitely, again, is a question of ensuring that we undertake the process as required by Chapter 10, which relates to competition matters, and go through all of those processes. We cannot come and say, you must charge 5 rand for 5 data, because he will say, have you determined what my costs are? The process will then determine whether this is cost-based among significant market players, because that's where the criteria would be. If you say, I want you to charge 5 rand, he said, but my cost is 7 rand. How do you arrive at that? Therefore, it's a requirement to undertake a process where they give you data and tell you what is the cost of providing that service. Then you can talk of, well, I think a reasonable markup will be weighted average cost of capital. That should be what an organization should operate around. And that is how it should be looked at in terms of our investigation. So I would argue that in catering and sort of like, why don't we provide our own food, etc.? Well, the other staff members are not entitled to this, even though they do the work. Sincerely, maybe that should be considered. I don't have any issues with that. It could be scrapped off if we look at it in the sense that people normally would not be moving out for lunch to their various restaurants, etc. We like to confine them there to do the job. It's normally 30 minutes and then quickly get into work. But if you then allow people to go, maybe we should then increase the lunch period to a reasonable time when people can go, or others may have lunch from home, prepared some food from home and say, well, this I'll have for lunch. But by and large, I think one can argue that there is no set rule that confines us to saying we must have food. If there's the feeling that in order to save costs, that's what we should do, we certainly don't have any problem with that.
Okay, just to assist, the issue there specifically, maybe it's how it's written in the report. The issue here is because you'll have Eskom meetings and you'd have council meeting. Ordinarily, you wouldn't have junior staff members having this type of executives meetings and council meetings. Hence, it's written as providing catering for those particular, because those meetings needs to happen based on PFMA, based on council and the act. They have to take place to make sure that they run the organization. So I don't want to give an impression here. I wouldn't agree to the 1 hour where people are leaving to go home. I mean, as a shareholder, because now you are reducing productivity at workplace. But I think the context of what has been written there, it needs to be given because it's Eskom meetings and council meetings. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to add on with regard to vacancies, I think the minister has articulated very well in terms of consultancy, because knowledge is transitory. What you know now, 10 years later, becomes obsolete. And therefore, from time to time, it's a specialized type of knowledge for which, as the minister indicated, you cannot hire someone for a full year. It's very costly when that person will just deal with a niche aspect of that matter. But at the same time...
Let's pass that one.
Okay, at the same time, we do train people to grab on certain things that are key to us to make sure that at least we have the capability and not only depend on consultants. And the vacancy rate, of course, one knows we are in a market environment where supply and demand are the key issues. If someone is working at ICASA and feels that I can get a better salary somewhere, that person will move and a vacancy is created. So the challenge of having a 100% filled position has got to be looked against what the market demands. And everybody will be aware that highly skilled jobs are so much in demand that anybody who's sitting somewhere and is requested to apply for a position that he feels will pay that person better. And that's what we are faced with at ICASA right now with vacancy rate. The professional and skilled people are living in droves because we don't have the resources, the financial resources. We fish in the same pond as operators, etc., and all that. So those are the challenges. Thank you. And I think allow the CEO.
Chair, I promise I'll be brief, if you'll indulge me. I think it's quite important, Honorable Davis, that we outline the process of what we're doing on subscription broadcasting. So last year in June, we published a notice to commence an inquiry. And through that notice, we started gathering data from all the critical stakeholders. In June this year, we published a discussion document. Again, as part of the inquiry into subscription broadcasting TV. The process will unfold from here. We are waiting to receive representations from stakeholders by December, and by the end of this financial year, there will be a findings document by the authority saying what is our assessment of the competitive nature in that market. And following from that findings document, there might be regulatory interventions following the Chapter 10 process that Councillor Acting Chairperson has alluded to. On your other question around PRA and why are there no targets, I think Chair, the response lies in how we have planned the deliverables in that program. We have planned them as annual deliverables. It does not mean that there is no work happening. To talk to your specific question around data prices, isn't this where the work around data prices is happening and how far are we on that one? So there's 4 legs to we call it the Cost to Communicate program. There's 4 legs to it. The first leg relates to just clarifying the business practices in the industry with regard to provision of data services. So in the short term, members would have noticed that we published amendments to the regulations on consumer protection. And those amendments deal with data expiry issues as well as in and out of bundle pricing differentials. We're hoping that those regulations will be finalized by the end of this financial year. That's the short-term intervention around consumer protection in respect of consumption of data services. The second layer then is the wholesale coal termination regulation. I appreciate and we accept that voice is no longer such a big issue, but by the end of this current financial year, we would also have made progress in terms of reviewing the coal termination rates that were prescribed in the last cycle of the glide path. So coal termination rates will also be an area of focus. The other is the priority markets project, and we have had this as a target over the past couple of years. By the end of this financial year, we will come out with a list of markets, which in ICASA's views will be the markets that require regulatory intervention. Those markets will invariably include some of the broadband services market. So that will also come out, that list will also come out at the end of the financial year. And the final leg, which is the fourth leg, is the inquiry by the Competition Commission. And we'll be working with the Commission in terms of the MOU that we have with them to support them in their process. And to the extent that there will be recommendations for regulatory intervention by the sector regulator from that inquiry, we will then abide accordingly. I think the rest of the other questions will be dealt with by the CFO, but there were questions by Honorable Tseli, specifically around the targets, 65%, why not 100%? If we were to take that one as an example, Honorable Tseli, it relates to the work we do in legal risk and CCC, how we resolve the cases that are referred to the Complaints and Compliance Committee. The challenge in that space is that because the CCC has to follow almost a quasi-judicial process, when the complaint comes in, you give the other party the opportunity to be heard, and invariably, they will involve lawyers, and in most instances, there will always be requests for extension by either of the parties on responding to the case that has been put forward by the other party. So the reason why we have not pitched it at 100% is to accept the reality that these cases don't always run at a pace that's dictated by us. There will always be processes around additional time for submission of representations. On the international forum, you are right, we could have framed that target better. The target currently, as you see it with the number, is the renewal of all our membership. So that's what we will do, we'll renew the membership to all the international forums. But the second thing is, we also have a target in terms of how we get value out of these forums. So one of the things that we use these forums for is to lobby for the country's position on regulatory matters, especially as they relate to spectrum management. So in some respects, they may also relate to other sectors such as the postal services, as we are also a member of the UPU. But the target is really about maintaining the membership, and secondly, participating in those forums and advancing the country's position. Chair, I'm going to pause here and let the CFO deal with the specific questions around underspending and cost containment, and maybe the details on the consultants. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the use of consultants. I guess, Honorable Davis, you are referring to the first presentation we prepared. Bulk of our expenditure on consultant, I would say 90% of these are actually recurring contracts, and bulk of this is on system support and annual license fees renewals. The bigger one portion of this is research consulting work. This is actually what PRA division is currently busy with. It's 2 projects that were appointed in March this year, which is last financial year. The invoices were only paid during the first quarter of the current financial year. Some of these issues were ad hoc requests to address issues on cost to communicate. So PRA, during our midterm review for 16-17 financial year, we then saw a need to actually move some of the targets from Q1 so that they can prioritize the 2 projects that were only finalized in Q2. These projects were finalized in Q2, hence the actual expenditure is recorded. And regarding the issues we have 2 projects that were conducted on remuneration anomalies. These are the additional consulting reports that we had to procure for council to make a decision on the demands that were forwarded by the employees. So this was not, we were not going to prepare these 2 reports internally because we were looking for an independent view on our current structure and the challenges raised by the employees. There was a project on project management process review. We had to appoint a consultant to develop more like a training manual for the system we are currently using for project management. This is the same system we'll be using to monitor our APP projects. So that we had to actually outsource. IT network security review, it was an additional IT audit review conducted by our internal audit. We don't have resource for this service, so we had to outsource, get an independent company to assist us with that. Actually, just to add on this is one of the projects that actually AG used during their year-end audit. This was not done again by the IT audit from the AG. Now, going back to cost containment, I must indicate, yes, the cost containment measures based on the outcome of the current year or prior year AG audit. We had to implement some of these measures. Same applies to cost to communicate, use of consultants, conference and meetings and catering. I must indicate, even if we say it will be limited to council, catering will be limited to council and Exco. If that meeting is less than 5 hours as required by the cost containment instruction note, we are not procuring catering for that. If it's 1 hour, we don't procure catering. So we are trying to comply with this cost containment because initially we were looking at how many hours will that meeting take. And if it's actually more than 5 hours, we'll then automatically procure. Cascading down to our junior staff employees. Yes, catering is procured if it's training or workshops, or maybe changes on the current systems that we are using. Where a project is or a workshop is facilitated by external person, we will definitely procure catering because that is in compliance with the cost containment measures. I think that's all, Chair. The other cost containment issues were detailed on the first presentation. I think that's all, CEO.
Yes. That is all, members, unless you have something to say. Honorable Machoba.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Most special thanks for the Minister for the management summary statement that gives us the main points of a detailed report. Chair, I just need, I have a seek clarity to the issue of the spectrum license. Is the spectrum license is available now in ICASA? If yes, how do you assist those poor communities to clearing those licenses out there? Or how to assist them, because some of them who has no capacity to in applications, do you have any chances to assist them? I think even the Deputy Minister can assist in this issue because it's my issue I'm always crying for. Thanks, Chair.
Reminded by Honorable Van Dam, there is tea and coffee, members outside. You can just grab and come back. We won't break for tea. That's the question, Minister.
Thanks, Chair. I think we'll allow the CEO to go into detail. Spectrum licensing is into full. I think maybe member as well. One of the things is currently those who have been licensed previously, it's continuing. There is an issue of the 2.6, 700 and 800 megawatts brackets that are still outstanding for licensing. You would note that the matter is between as well, is in court, Minister Twele and all that. We're trying to resolve the matter to make sure that there is no more court. I'm scheduled to have a meeting with Minister Twele so that we can deal with where the differences are. Obviously, the issue of small businesses and new entrants is very critical. You note in the policy, white paper policy, it speaks even to the areas of one, open access network, where we hoping that this area of spectrum licensing would allow new entrances. But it's not only about allowing them to get the licenses to come and participate. It's about their sustainability. So if they do get the licenses, how do we ensure, even from government point of view, that they get the licenses and they are able to operate? But equally, the licenses are going into different parts. Spectrum in terms of the telcos, mobile operators, but equally, there is a need for us to deal with the issues around broadcasting, spectrum license fees, licensing. So that, I think, one day, Chair, will come just to deal in detail and allow ICASA to present the plans in terms of what we want to see as a license regime, spectrum licensing regime that needs to be implemented. From a policy point of view, there are constraints that are constraining ICASA that we need to resolve between ourselves and telecoms, DTPS, so that we allow the regulator to be able to implement. So there's still gaps in terms of policy that we need to close. I don't know, CEO, if I left something you want to, yeah. So that's where we are. But we do take cognizance. I mean, the issue you're raising, Honorable Machoba, is very critical. In a transformational society, we have to make sure that not only new entrances find space, that you don't create monopoly, but equally you ensure that when they enter, there is sustainability for new entrances. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, I think the Minister has covered the response adequately. Thank you.
The time is up. Honorable Davis, time is up. Remember, we still have to go to SABC. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want us to get clarity before we leave this meeting on this report on the former CEO. Now, at the last meeting in October, you did commit to us commissioning a report from ICASA on the matter which you've referred to, and I appreciate that. And you committed to that report being discussed in this committee. Now, when I look at the program for the rest of the year, I don't see that scheduled for the rest of the year. And obviously, as we've already said, we don't have a copy of this report. It has not been tabled before this committee. Now, the Minister has revealed to us today that there was a payout of R1 million to the former CEO before he could be disciplined for the allegations against him regarding sexual harassment. Now, I think that this is a major, major issue. If somebody is accused of sexual harassment, resigns before action can be taken against them, and then is given R1 million worth of public money, I think that it's a very serious issue that we need to discuss in this committee. Now, I'd like to get absolute clarity from you. What is the status of this report? Has it been completed by ICASA? Do you have it in your possession? When will you make it available to us? And when will we get to discuss it in committee? Will it be before the end of this year? I think we need absolute clarity on that. Thank you.
Members, the committee program comes back to you for approval. The two reports and other outstanding matters are very urgent on the table of the chairperson. Before the end of the year, even much, much earlier than the end of the year, once you get the report, that report will be circulated. In fact, this report must be in your desk by tomorrow. And then it's scheduled in the program next week or the other week, because we need to give those reports time. No hit and run like we want to do now. Just have it. We are going to circulate on Wednesday the revised program that will include these reports. That's what we wanted to do, so that we don't have snippets of discussions on the reports, because they are too serious. Can we leave it at that? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, you're saying that we are going to get the report tomorrow?
Yes.
You've an absolute watertight guarantee that we will get the report tomorrow, and then we will also have a meeting scheduled tomorrow for next week to discuss the report. That's what you've said.
I am saying by tomorrow you will get the reports. And let's not go to guarantees. What I'm saying, tomorrow you are going to get the report, because It's in the chairperson's office, you'll get it, and then programmed tomorrow. In the program, that will get straight to you, so that by the next 2 weeks, that report is discussed, and we have time for it. That's what I'm saying. It's not a guarantee, because I don't know what it means, but in the next 2 weeks, the report will be discussed.
Thank you.
Can we go to SABC?
As you described it, that was set up. And I just want you to confirm that, in your view, what led to the eventual load shedding in 2014 was in fact what you call the deferring of maintenance for too long a period.
Certainly.
And that what you did was put a discipline in place that began to overcome that problem.
Certainly, Honorable Gordon, you remember that there were weekly war room meetings, and I was reporting on an ongoing basis about what the maintenance plan was, and we had also resolved to maintain a posture of transparency by announcing and informing the public about the state of generation, so that people could plan their lives, businesses could plan their lives.
Okay, I want to come back to transparency in a moment. But you also said that by the time you were forced to leave in March 2014, A, the discipline had been implanted, and B, the period subsequent to that saw the benefits of the discipline that you put in place, for which now Mr. Molefe takes a lot of credit.
Certainly, that is my belief, and it's a belief of the fellow executives who worked very, very hard on recovering generation performance.
Now, you recall that in the war room period, the issue of diesel supply and diesel usage became a big issue, both for the reason that large amounts of money were spent on diesel, but secondly, the mystery that surrounded the suppliers of diesel and the contracts that were awarded to them. And one of the most intriguing things at the time, Chair, it was very hard to find out who were the suppliers of diesel and at what price. Am I right?
You were right. You are right. That was a very, very contentious and contested issue at the time.
Why?
I think that issue illustrated some of the basic flaws of procurement at Eskom. And what do I mean by that? It seems that emergency situations had been used as a reason to deviate from what normal procurement would be, So I have some understanding for it, because you needed quick turnaround to procure the fuel so you can keep the lights on. But I think it created a major risk in regard to who were giving these contracts and why those particular individuals and not others. A normal procurement would create a level playing field so that everybody could compete. So yeah, that was a big problem at the time.
So is it possible that during that period, either board members themselves or families of board members or people connected to board members received contracts to supply diesel?
I can't be absolutely certain. I know that those were some of the allegations that were being made at the time. I remember reading some of these things in the newspapers.
Okay, let's go back to your points about the appointment of the CEO, and you described the process, 3 names, the suggested or preferred candidate, and so on and so on. when you were forced to leave, Mr. Malife came on as an acting CEO and later confirmed as a CEO. Are you aware of the process that was followed for Mr. Malife's appointment? Would the same process as you described have taken place?
To the best of my recollection, I could not. I don't recall that position being advertised as would have been the requirement in law. I am not too certain as to whether the shareholder has the prerogative to install a CEO in that manner. It's unprecedented. So I'm not familiar with what actually happened, whether that went to cabinet or not. So I wouldn't be able to assist you there because I was not there at the time, and I wasn't looking for that particular job anyway. So.
Well, you were told you won't get it even if you're looking for it. So, Chair, this is another area where Mr. Banara and his team should look into it. Let's move quickly before the Chair stops me to the financial status of Eskom. No, but this is all very interesting stuff, Chair. In your affidavit that's been supplied to us in relation to your suspension, so-called, on page 13, you said that your suspension could lead to a downgrade, and that in fact Standard & Poor did downgrade Eskom to junk status on the 19th of March 2015. You also expressed the view that at the time S&P did say that this downgrade to junk status was linked to your suspension. Well, what lessons are we learning about the recklessness of some of the decisions made both by politicians and by boards, and the kind of financial impact that it has on big entities like Eskom, and perhaps in today's context, the country itself?
Well, I think I don't know of any other incident in the past where and I'm going to call this one a misgovernance event triggered a downgrade in the manner that it happened at Eskom. Because remember, this is the time when we are also talking to investors, and we're also giving investors assurance that we got a handle on the company. So investors, when they give you money, they want to know, do you have a plan? Do you know what you're going to do? And can you give them any confidence of stability? So we had done that. So it is natural, therefore, that when a dramatic event of that nature happened, that investors would take fright. So investors took fright at the time, and that's why they did the downgrade. I should think that to the extent that some of these things are happening and have been happening since then, we saw, for example, how some of the investors, PIC, for example, insisting on certain governance changes. So there is a relationship, and I think there are important lessons in that regard.
Yeah, last point, and I hope you might allow me to come back a little later if there is time, is on page 11 of your affidavit. You make reference to a particular board member, Ms. Klein, and how she, according to your assertion, turned the whole question of your recusal stroke suspension, your problem, by just asking you to justify why you should not recuse yourself and eventually why you should not be suspended. What does this tell you about Ms. Klein and her approach as a board member? And then with that, I mean, can you share with us on reflection, why did the board do what it did, i.e. take such extraordinary measures to suspend and eventually ask you to leave your position as CEO?
In retrospect, my sense is that whole interaction was being managed in a manner that would create a defense for the board, that they gave me an opportunity to make representations, but it was a farce in my view, and I could see at the time that, you know, the outcome is pretty much predetermined. And I saw this because when I came back into the meeting, there was a letter of suspension already in front of the chairperson. So it was, you know, a matter of course that I was then suspended in that manner. I was a bit dazed and confused by that. So I, you know, all kinds of things were playing themselves in my head, because also some of the information started to surface. You recall that the chair, Mr. Zolatsotsi, made certain pronouncements about those events at Eskom at the time. I read an article that made reference to the fact that I was suspended because I had refused to do certain things. I had refused, for example, to keep Collins in the company beyond the agreed time, because there was an overlap. So there was a month to say, you know, you're outgoing acting, overlap with me. But a proposal had been made that I should keep him on in some capacity, which I simply refused. And my reasoning at the time was the fact that there were all of these allegations in the media about Colin, the 43 million TNA thing, and something to do with COSATU, and I, you know, I did not feel comfortable to make that sort of extension of his stay in the overlap, which I also couldn't understand. The board couldn't resolve it because I had said, well, if the board so decides, you know, the board must take a decision. But clearly it was a matter that the board could not, if you like, impose on me. So there was a newspaper story that made reference to that. I think in the final analysis, I concluded that this coming board did not see me fitting into whatever its plans are. You know, typically when a new minister joins a department, I asked the minister, do you see me as part of the future? So I can then be able to make my decisions. I recall an episode like that in the past. So in a sense, therefore, I kind of concluded that this board did not see me as part of its plans going forward. Beyond that, I can't. I'm as curious to establish as much information as could be established, and I wouldn't want to enter into any speculations, as it were, except what I've just referred to. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mazone. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, Mr. Matoni and I go back to when I first joined this committee in 2011, so I too have known him for some time. more as, sorry, what was that? Oh, a joke. Okay. Sometimes you need a bit of a joke when you see what we're dealing with, Mr. Matona. Mr. Matona, whenever we know a witness is coming, I always go back and I check things that I may have said in the past. And I noted with almost a little bit of a giggle that when you were appointed CEO, one of the lines in my statement was, he'd certainly been a good Director General, so let's hope he carries on, this sort of, I think I said independence that he's shown against the board when you're CEO. And from what I can see, there is a certain independent rebellion that you were trying to lead in certain things that resulted in your, what is very clear, your unpopularity amongst certain members of the board, and certainly a lack of, maybe the word popularity isn't good, but perhaps the word favorability in terms of extending your contract as CEO with a minister. In your opinion, I mean, I don't think that it's coincidental, but that might be my opinion. Do you think it's coincidental that the time that you were appointed and the time that you were suspended, so basically we're looking at a period of roughly 4 years, because you started in 2010 as DG, then you move into your space as CEO. At that same time, Brian Damas works in a particular period of time.
Some members of the board with the executive team to go engage with the unions. And why it's important for us to get stability from an employee perspective, it is important for us to have that stability so that we can continue delivering on our mandate. And if you look at our streams of revenues, we get quite a bit, around about 76% of our contribution come from advertising. So it is important for us to remain operational and doing and delivering on the commitment that we've made. So the strike was basically ran for about 2 days. We managed to engage with the unions on basically a framework that we're going to follow. What is key for us is to negotiate within a framework. So we cannot be negotiating without negotiating outside the negotiating table or outside the negotiating framework. So we've agreed that we reopen the negotiations, and in those negotiations we'll be able then to find each other around what's important for the employees. And we, of course, as the board and the executive team, care a lot about the role and the well-being of the employees. So that's where we are with the strike, and the strike is ended. Of course, we will continue engaging and see how we find a common ground between us and the unions. Last weekend, on Saturday night, we got the news that we've lost the head of legal services at the SABC, Sizwe Vilakazi, and the board and the executive team went to meet up with the family on Sunday, and the funeral will be held in this coming Saturday, and we'll have a memorial service tomorrow at the SABC. So in a nutshell, that's basically where we are, and those are the things that we've prioritized. But today really, for me, was just to give you a high-level perspective of where we are and what are the things that we're prioritizing. And I do want to confirm that we've had a meeting with the minister where there's been great level of alignment in terms of expectations, and from both parties, basically the board and the minister. And we
people feeling very uncomfortable and very unwilling to carry on working at Eskom. Could you give us a few examples of the governance issues that you were aware of that were making things difficult to work at Eskom?
I've already referred to the state of infighting within the board when I arrived there, and as I said, it was over procurement matters, as it were. You know, I remember the T systems.
Thank you, Board Chair, so that we are clear, and thank you to the members. As the Board Chair has indicated, today is really about taking you through Q1 report, which ended in June. So I think first off, as a summary, we would just like to say that it was a difficult quarter for the SABC in terms of its performance, because I think, as you would remember, that's when we really hit the big iceberg in terms of our financial crisis. So the monthly revenues for the first 3 months were lower than expected, and as at the end of June, we were owing our creditors about 597 million, which has subsequently grown over the months, but that's where we were in June. But on the positive side is that we were still able to deliver programming and also to meet some of our mandate requirements. We did have a launch of the SABC 3 new positioning, which with new programs that started in April, which we're following really on the launch that we had for SABC 2 and SABC 1 in February. In terms of the performance of the audience share in quarter one, there was a slight a marginal improvement on a quarter-to-quarter basis, with an improvement of 2% on prime time and just under 1% across the performance period. And I would just like to say that 10 of the best performing programs in the 3 months under review were on SABC 1 as a platform. We also, from a radio point of view, achieved a 71.4% share, which was quite pleasing because it shows that our radio bouquet is still as popular as it has always been. There were a lot of current affairs events that we covered through the period, and also some sporting events. We also continued to do some work which was quite constrained in terms of the digital infrastructure projects because of the cash issue. So we do have delays around the CAPEX projects that we have. What is pleasing is that at the end of June, we had signed all the performance agreements with the top 3 and also the executives. We are now signing out the general managers at the general manager level now at the end of October. I would just like then to move to the performance on the predetermined objectives. I think, as the Minister indicated, that some of the things that we are going to be putting here, we're not going to be putting in the detail because of the nature of the business that we're in. But in terms of one of the key pillars, the first pillar, which is financial sustainability, is that for the first quarter we had a target of a break-even for the quarter, but we did not make that. We recorded a loss of 74 million. And this was really due to our inability to meet our target for the first quarter with the declines in commercial revenue, and also the advertiser cutbacks. There are some strategies that have been developed which are going to assist us to claw back that amount, especially now in this quarter that we are in. Also, on the issue of maintaining the creditors' payment average days ratio, we did not succeed in maintaining the 60-day target because, as you would see, that we are owing our creditors a lot of money. So for quarter one, we came in at 78 vis-a-vis the target of 60. And then on the debtors collection, the target was 60, but we came in at 64 days. On this aspect, we're also struggling because we did have an arrangement with some clients for a settlement discount. And then moving on to content and platforms. SABC has managed to perform across the network above the ICASA quota. So for SABC 1, the target is 70. SABC 1 came in at 77. Similarly with SABC 2, we came in at 70% vis-a-vis 60%, and SABC 3, we came in at 57 vis-a-vis 40%. Whilst this is commendable in terms of performance, it does mean that it is a little bit more costly, as it is more costly to produce local content. But we are going to be looking at various models of different partnerships where we can maybe go into a co-funding model and co-production so that we minimize those costs. And then just from a provincial performance, you'll see that we have got what looks like an overachievement, but essentially these are programs that rolled into the next period. And because we were mindful of our financial situation, our target for this year is quite low, because normally we have a target of about 9 programs per quarter, but because of the financial situation, we are going to be targeting very fewer programs throughout the provinces. And then in terms of the languages, our target was an average of 1 hour 48 minutes per week, but we've managed to achieve just 1 hour and 50 minutes. So this is a slight improvement, but it is still slow in terms of where it should be. Then coming on to the digital space. The websites of the SABC are not anywhere where they should be. We did have a plan which did not quite pan out the way that we had hoped that it would. We appointed a service provider around November, December, and it was one of those contracts that were flagged as irregular. So we have had to suspend the engagement, and we are now getting into a new process where we are going to, the procurement process is underway to get another supplier that's going to help us to upgrade our websites and also maintain the activity in that area. On the human resources side, the career progression framework was developed and concluded. We are now just at a point of proceeding to move into a pilot project with it. Performance contracting, as I indicated earlier, this has been achieved in that the executives and the top 3 have all signed. We are now at general manager level who are signing, and they are going to be contracting further down as well. In terms of training and the workplace skills plan, we did not achieve our targets simply because we do not have the funds to engage suppliers at this stage. So Q1 has seen us, and I think it also will permeate into Q2, where we are not able to fulfill that obligation. Moving into governance, which is one of our most critical areas, is that we have for the first quarter, we had not finished the audit action plan as we were wrapping up. Around May was when we received the full audit. We have developed an audit action plan which was circulated to members. It's quite detailed, but we just thought that for info it will be circulated. So we have developed a very rigorous plan which is being monitored on a monthly basis, and we also have got a similar approach to the internal audit findings, because the internal audit findings, as you will see in the subsequent slide, that it was also an area of concern. Even the AG was concerned about the fact that internal audit would pick up issues, but they would not necessarily be followed. So there's a heightened focus on actually working on the audit findings, both internal and external. And then in terms of the risk of the risk unit, the risk assessments are being conducted throughout the provinces, and also in Johannesburg they've been completed. And then in terms of the finances, for the first quarter, the SABC came in just 200 million under budget for the revenue. But there was also 229 million in expenses that was under budget. So for the quarter, we were at a net loss profit of 74 million, as opposed to the break even that we had hoped for. So this is really where the rubber hits the tar in terms of the poor performance of Q1. And then I just want to move to some of the matters that were raised by the PCC in terms of what we are going to do about certain things. As I said, that we'll not get into details, but one of the questions that was asked is that what are we going to be doing to mitigate the decline in sponsorship? So we do have strategies which we will share with the Minister that go into detail of exactly what it is that we're going to do. And then there was also just some feedback from previous points that were raised by the PCC, which have been dealt with. It's also Important to note that today we're not going into any of the ad hoc committee recommendations or updates because there is a session that is scheduled for later in the month. And then we'll just share very high-level turnaround strategies that we were asked. As I said, that we will be implementing clawback strategies and we'll also be developing new revenue streams. There's also a heightened effort to improve our digital media offering and also to look at other revenue models. We also having a lot of interactions with the media industry to make sure that we are aligned and that we deliver to that which they are willing to pay for, because it's important that we continue to provide value for their money. There's also a lot of effort around cost-saving mechanisms in the SABC. We are making sure that we adhere to the National Treasury stipulations in terms of the cost savings. There's also a lot of focus on strategic partnerships and ventures, joint ventures, to see how we can start to work closely with the broader industry. And there's also, in Q1, there were some engagements, initial engagements with the funding institutions, which, you know, they were also just being delayed because they said that, you know, they needed stability, they needed a full board, they needed the full executive. So we're going to be resuscitating those now. And then in terms of the content platform, one of the things that we're looking to do is to review our our television scheduling strategy to make sure that whilst it does answer does tick all the boxes in terms of the public mandate delivery, it also has got to tick the commercial tick so that we have got a balance. We're also wanting to develop a clear radio proposition, because I think what happened in the past few months is that radio found itself not being put in a position that it deserves, and we are looking at that as well as reviewing the operating model. We also have got an issue with sports rights that we have raised with the minister in terms of the acquisition of the rights, to say that the rights are quite exorbitant and ill affordable. So we would like assistance from that point of view in terms of the acquisition of the sports rights. And then going into the technology side, that's just a list of some of the projects that we are busy with, and as at Q1, a lot of them were just deferred and delayed because we just didn't have the money to pursue them. The risk with this is that the delay on this will eventually affect the product on air. So it is quite a concern for us that some of these projects we are not able to see through. And then in terms of the personnel, human resources, the big issue that we are trying to manage is the management of personnel costs, and also in terms of how we are approaching the discussions with labor, is that we need to get into a multi-term wage agreement, and then the performance management I've spoken about in terms of how we are rolling it out. In terms of ICASA itself, there are many things that we're engaging ICASA on. The documents have been submitted, but albeit they were submitted in Q2, but the work started in Q1, where we're reviewing some of the elements that we want to discuss with ICASA, like the must carry regulation. And there's also the ongoing review of policies within the SABC, and also the focus is on clearing the internal audit matters. Just to recap the things that were raised by the Auditor General in terms of how we arrived at our opinion that we were not a going concern, and then there was also a lot of irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. This is this discussion that we had when we were here to table our annual financial statement, and to ask the question to say how are we then going to be clearing and fixing these. So we just want to say that from the Auditor General's point of view, we had 146 findings. We have got 80 that are being processed now. We've resolved 28 as at the end of Q2. We are now have outstanding of 38. So these we manage on a monthly basis, and this here, as much as it was as much as we're talking Q1, but this is the as is, so that we can bring you up to speed with where we are with regards to the audit in particular. And then in terms of the internal audit findings, you will see that we had an opening balance of 624 items, but it is important that we understand that the 624 items ranges over 5 years, so it is not for the fiscal that we are in. And we have detailed them in such a way that once the business units themselves say that something is resolved, then internal audit has to go back and confirm. That's why you will see there's a column that talks about provisional resolved findings that are provisional, because that has not been certified by internal audit. So we've put through quite a tough process to make sure that the business units don't just say we've cleared something and then at a later stage we find that we haven't cleared them. And you will see that if you look at the graph, it shows you the aging of most of those internal audit findings. So our focus really is to clean up that range between the 1 to 4 years. And I think it's also important to mention that SABC has appointed a chief audit executive, which will be starting in the 1st of December. So we've really tried to do all of this work so that he can hit the ground running. And we've also made sure that the compliance unit takes a lot of responsibility around the monthly monitoring of clearing the audit findings. Yes, and I think that's it for us now. We will take questions.
Thank you, Minister. Thanks, CEO. Acting CEO. Are you acting? Oh, okay. Members, don't go to the actors. Don't go there to the actors in SABC. Acting CEO, CFO, COO, don't go there, please. Members, that's the report. Any questions, contributions, Honorable Vandam?
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to take the opportunity to officially welcome our third minister this year to the communications portfolio. We have said that we expect her to hit the ground running. She's been the chairperson of the Telecommunications Portfolio Committee, and she's very au fait with the matters in the portfolio, and it seems that she has hit the ground running, and we're grateful for that. I must express, however, my disappointment that she will be taking the judgment of the High Court in the SOS Public Broadcasting versus SABC case on appeal. I thought that was a very good judgment in that it gave legal certainty about matters that have plagued the sector. It gave legal certainty that the Broadcasting Act is the primary act when it applies to the SABC. It gave certainty of the independence of the SABC board from the executive. It gave certainty that the SABC shouldn't in perpetuity have actors. I know you said we shouldn't go there, but I'm going to go there. But it gave certainty about that. So it's really, really disappointing that the minister now seeks to take this on appeal. We do know that government is very litigious. They like to go to court, they like to spend lots of public money on court cases, the majority of which they lose. So I thought the right course of action in this instance, if it's correct as the minister says that a lot of the matters don't have clarity and she wants clarity, all she needs to do then is get a declaratory order and say to the court, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is unclear. Can you issue a declaratory order where you make this clear? So it's disappointing again that fresh in the portfolio, she's once again engaging in litigation as government always does. And then I must also express my disappointment at this presentation. It was presented in a very matter-of-factly, blasé manner. Yeah, we've lost 74 million. Yes, we owe our creditors 565 million. Very vague. Yes, we've got a clawback strategy. All very vague, all very low-key. No sense of alarm at what's happening at the SABC. Business as usual. No, we keep having these meetings where we talk about the SABC being in crisis. The SABC is here again today, very blasé, very matter-of-factly, like they don't really seem seized by the fact that it seems like it's business as usual and nothing different has been implemented. I thought the SABC would have come today, in one part, to let us know what the first quarter report was, and then expended a lot of detail, as we requested last time, in giving us information about what is the way forward. What are you going to do about it? We all know the SABC is in crisis. We've known for years the SABC is in crisis. But what you should have come here today was give us detail about what you're going to do about it. How are you going to fix this conundrum that the SABC is in? Instead of giving us vague bullet points about, yeah, clawback strategy, very vague turnaround strategy, and no detail. So I really, really would have appreciated that detail be provided to us. And then another sector where I'm going to require a lot of detail is the matter of appointing the SABC's top 3 executives. Now, the court had made it very, very clear, which is the judgment that's now being appealed, that one, that process must be conducted in an open and transparent manner. Thus far, it hasn't been conducted in a transparent and open manner. The information has been kept very secret. We have not been taken on board about what's happening with that process. So I would like a lot of detail about what is happening with the appointment of the top 3 executives. One, who the people are that are being considered. If they're not being considered anymore, what the process is with that. Because we know that the former Minister of Communications had said that she was unhappy with the candidates, and she kind of left it up in the air. So what's happening now? Are you going to re-advertise? What's going to happen? Are you still considering those people? Who are those people? What are their credentials? What are their qualifications? So can I have quite some detail from the board chair about what's the way forward on that? We were promised permanent executives by the end of January, and we want permanent executives by the end of January. And then another question, we know that the PSL rights for soccer, they must be in by Friday. Does the SABC intend on submitting a bid? Can you assure the South African public that they will continue to be able to watch soccer on SABC? On free-to-air TV, so can you give us some detail whether or not the SABC will be submitting a bid? And then I'm also very unconvinced by the minister's argument that we must separate the SABC's commercial and public divisions when talking about the SABC. The Broadcasting Act doesn't say Parliament only has oversight over the public broadcasting sector of the SABC and the rest, you know, we can't have any view of. When reporting about the SABC, you're required to give us full information about both public and the commercial sides of the SABC. So I would like for us also to provide quite some detail about how you're going to amend that application to National Treasury. We know it was a 3 billion guarantee. How do you intend on amending it? Where are you going to amend it? What's going to happen? And I'm also not convinced about it being commercially sensitive information. It's not commercially sensitive information. The SABC does not stand by any stretch of the imagination to lose their market share. The SABC will continue to have their market share. They're a public broadcaster, and you have a duty to report to Parliament about the SABC's finances. And then other information that I just require clarity on. As the acting CEO has rightfully said, the SABC is in serious financial trouble. So how is it, acting CEO, that last financial year you were given a 800,000 Rand bonus? You were given when you were in your GE of commercial enterprises, you were given an 800,000 Rand commission. How is it possible that the SABC, being in serious financial trouble, that a top executive is given a bonus of almost 1 million? So can you give us some detail about what the circumstances were where you were given a bonus of almost 1 million? And then to the acting, to the deputy chairperson of the board. Well, let me start like this. I'm really grateful that the chairperson resigned from the board of the of Mrs. Tobeka Zuma. Tobeka Ngema Zuma. Oh, you haven't resigned? You seem to be disagreeing. I'm grateful that you have in the public domain at least, it looks like you're disagreeing, but you can let me know, that you've resigned from that board in order to focus on the SABC. And for the deputy chairperson, during interviews, you made it quite clear that when appointed, you'd make it very clear whether or not you would be putting your name forward or accepting nomination from the ANC, NSC. That time has come. So can you let us know whether you will stay at the SABC board or you'll accept nomination for the ANC, NSC for the Congress next month? Yes, thank you. That's it for now.
All right. Next, Honorable Davis.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the new board for your presentation. I want to start by just offering our condolences again to the family of the of Sizwe Vilakazi, who was shot dead. I'd like to know from the board, is it possible to shed any light on the circumstances of his death? We read in the newspapers that nothing was stolen, and there seems to be a mystery surrounding his death. Is foul play suspected, and are there any processes underway at the SABC to determine whether his death was related to the work that he did at the SABC? My next question relates to the current labour dispute with Bemawu, who are calling for a 10% increase. Can you tell us firstly what steps you are taking to resolve the dispute? And secondly, what steps are you taking to keep the SABC operative should a prolonged labour strike go ahead? And then thirdly, I just want to come in on something that my colleague has raised and that the Minister raised at the beginning, and that is her announcement that she will be appealing the decision of the High Court in the SOS Coalition case regarding the appointment of the executive members. And the Minister, as she told us, says that she wants to have quality control over those who are appointed. Now, this is precisely the argument that Minister Faith Mutambi made when she unlawfully interfered in the board to ensure that Hlaudi Motsoeneng was appointed as the CEO. And I think that none of us want another Hlaudi, not even you, Minister, because he's going to make your life a nightmare. Now, it seems that this new minister wants to take us back to the era of Minister Mutambi, which is trying to turn the SABC back into a state broadcaster, where the minister gets to tell the board what to do and who to appoint. And it's very disappointing that in such a short space of time we seem to be regressing under this new minister. But my question isn't to the minister. She's made her point, and frankly, we don't expect much less from her. We know that she was very close to Minister Mutambi. But my question is to the chairperson of the SABC board. Now, you gave an interview a week ago where you said that you want to use your skills and expertise to fix what is wrong at the SABC. Now, one of the things that's gone wrong at the SABC has been the unlawful interference of ministers in the affairs of the SABC board. So, what are you going to do about this appeal that the minister is lodging? Is the SABC board going to fight that appeal in court, and is it going to defend its independence as required by the Constitution and by the law? So in other words, will you be opposing the minister's appeal application in court? My next question relates to the SIU investigation. At the weekend in the papers, the chairperson of the SABC board said that they had met with the SIU and that they had received a progress report on the investigations. Please can you share with us the highlights of that progress report and let us know how that investigation is progressing. Then lastly, I just want to talk about the cost containment measures that has been partially covered by my colleague. But what are you doing in general to curb the high salaries, performance bonuses that you've inherited from the Hlaudi Motsoeneng era? And does the 0% increase apply to senior management as well as more junior staff members at the SABC? Thank you.
Hans Machoba.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, based on what I've been seeing so far from 2 weeks, from the past 2 weeks, I was expecting the briefing of the staff strike for SABC. Mine, Chair, is to know what I want to say, Chair, and what was the pertinent advice in terms of this to stopping the strikes from SABC? I just need that clarity. Maybe it was an illicit strike. It was not a strike. I was preparing for my question, Chair, but you said Machoba because I was busy preparing my questions. But so far, I just need that information about the strike.
All right.
Thank you.
Honorable Tsedi. It's your turn, Honorable Tsedi. Pay your dues.
Thanks, Chair. Let me welcome the presentation, Chair, and also congratulate the brand new board of the SABC. I'm confident that they will definitely deliver to the mandate in trying to turn things around. But I wanted, Chair, to start with the issue that was raised earlier by one honorable member, and I think it will be, to me, it will be improper for the portfolio committee. I will need your guidance for the portfolio committee to be allowed to be dragged into the issue of the speculations around the sad incident that you spoke about earlier on. I think it will be improper for us to entertain that particular issue here and start to speculate as raised by one honorable member. There are a few issues that will need to be clarified on, Chair. One is with regard to the issue of the TV license, license fees. We have on a number of occasions raised the issue of the strategies to try and deal with this particular aspect. And I'm raising this thing in the light of the decision to delink the license from the digital migration application processes, as to whether that decision does not impact on the issue of people contributing to their fees in terms of the licenses. So all I'm saying is that maybe can you share with us some of the strategies? I know you are hardly a month in the office, but for us, I suspect it might have been one of the issues that came out from the strategic session that you spoke about earlier on. The second one, Chair, relates to the accountability instruments in terms of what has been agreed upon between the shareholder and the board. I'm raising this thing because with the previous board, we raised this particular issue, that sometimes it becomes very unfair for the portfolio committee to conduct oversight over an entity not knowing what is it that has been agreed upon from the development point of view between the shareholder and the company. So it's an issue that I think I would appreciate if the minister can as well talk to that particular issue. But I am confident that with the new board now, we will definitely go a long way in trying to change things around. Congratulations once more. Thanks, Chair.
Any question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe a comment first. I think, Chair, we in our program we might be having because we'll need a separate update meeting with the board as a whole on these issues, because we have not yet met the new board. That is going to be important for us to do that, so that we make a follow-up with all areas and recommendations which came out of the ad hoc committee report adopted by Parliament. I know the interim board have taken us through on others, but there are areas which are left. And I know that here we're just looking at the first quarter performance and your financials in the first quarter. But I think we need that. Also, I hold a different view. I don't know as you, usually I don't mince my words with DA approach. That will be DA, both Davis and Van Dam on the court judgment. I think, Minister, you are right to appeal. I think also you have to clarify on which aspects of the judgment, because it's not one aspect. But for me, in as far as it's not clearly giving us a guide on separation of issues and authority, especially around the appointment of the executives between the board and the minister, and also making clear how it interprets what is contained in the memorandum of incorporation and the charter. So for me, that's good. You take that up, so it will help us also in Parliament, so that we are clear about that position, because we wanted to try by all means not to gloss over issues that we don't want interference of. We jealously guard the authority and power of the board and our role as Parliament. Let me tell you, we'll fight everybody if we want to take our role as Parliament when it comes to that. So for us, it must be very clear. That is why I'm saying, actually, I support you, Minister, for actually helping us to clarify that. Secondly, on your turnaround plans, again, I want to differ with DA's position on when it comes on you are putting forward your turnaround strategy. And it's true, you are correct that actually you are in competition with other broadcasters. You can't come here, once you make that information, you can tell us where you are going. We are going to call you again. You can't come here and disclose everything. Your competitors, this is a public platform. So I don't see anything wrong in doing that. That is why we'll need that interface again, share with the board, new board, which will take us into confidence and through when things have moved. Because we are very much interested in the stability of the SABC. Also, I think you, in relation to strike, chair of the new board, you said you had to sit down with the unions to agree on a negotiating on a certain framework. Also, Chair, I'll request that not even today, the board must take us through that framework, not because we want to get involved, but we want to be aware. You must know that everybody in the public writes to this committee, so that when even unions, there are many people in the SABC who have written and who have come to meet with us. We are meeting them not because we are getting involved in the wanting to solve labor disputes, but precisely because they are members of public. We give them a hearing. So we'll want to actually get that framework, Chair, to be taken forward. Then lastly, Member Van Dam raises issues which we dealt with in the interviews of asking members of the board. Now, I don't know whether she's part of ANC branches running PGMs on nominations. I think that's what, if she wants to know ANC system, join the ANC. Because we will never delve in yours, in your as SDA. But you want to, you want a member of the board, a question which she explained clearly to you. And you see, as ANC and South Africans in particular, we must actually resist this temptation and a picture which DA wants to create. All African which is associated, or a black person associated with ANC is wrong. We must resist that strongly. And in any case, majority of people in South Africa associate themselves with ANC. That is why we are getting these many votes. So you are going to run into that problem every time, wherever you go. Of course, well, it's your task to fight those things. So, this tendency, Chair, because this is a question we dealt with in the interviews. Now you come, you want people who have been appointed by this very committee and Parliament. You are hashing those things. I think it's wrong, Chair. It's completely wrong. Lastly, Chair, I think on the issue, because we know we are concerned in any case of what have been happening, the victimization, intimidation of SABC staff when they raised issues. Of course, we saw it ourselves when we were there. I think SABC itself will have also the board now to look into how do you protect also right from the executive going down. Because you see, there's this tendency now there, which have been there in any case when people started to raise problems with SABC. They are intimidated. So it will be very, I think it's in our interest to know how did this happen? How was your legal person? I know the police will take, I don't want you to say, no, the police will take it. So I know the police will do that. But on your side, what can you, because that will go a long way in protecting everybody in that SABC. We know that you are the SABC, all we have done is just to put a new board. taking over from the interim board, continuing their work. But that doesn't say the problems are not there. Those problems are still there. In the middle management, intimidation is still continuing. This is what you are going to be seized with. So it's very important to really attend to those things as a board also. Thank you, Chair.
You'll get next round. Next round. I know you want to respond to this. No. Can I chair the meeting, Honorable Vandam? Can you allow the chair to chair the meeting? Because I know you want to respond to what he was saying. You will get that chance. No, you will get that chance, but not now. Because there are many questions raised to the committee. They will respond, and then we'll come back. No, just hold on. Just put aircon so that your blood is a bit cool. Well, there are two questions maybe that I want to raise. Just to say, in your presentation, you didn't say anything about DTT readiness. So that all the time you keep on dealing with that, including the editorial policy. I think the committee will be happy to hear that are we getting there in terms of that. Honorable said, thank you very much, because I thought venturing into the issue of the case would be very dangerous for all of us to get into. I think what we did earlier was good to say condolences, all of that, and maybe we need to leave it to the police or whoever investigating, so that at a particular stage we'll get a report from what the police are doing. I don't think we must venture into that one because it will jeopardize everything. So I think it's what I noted earlier. There will always be a festival of ideas in the committee on a number of issues, whether it's the case or something else. And I think those issues are welcome, so that you say what you want to say here. But at the end, we'll have to say, this is the direction on all those matters. Whether what the minister said about the case, the view of each member on that, it's correct. And differing on that, it takes us somewhere. With those two clarities, Honourable Minister, on DTT and editorial policy, you'll then get into that. But I think on the deputy chair issue, Honourable Kalaku, I think you raised it, and I'm sure we are not in the. I'm sure we are not there. We have dealt with those issues earlier on when we interviewed. This is what Honourable Kalaku was saying. I will give it to you. No, don't. No, I'm not shutting anybody down. I'm saying wait. I'm saying wait. Now is the time for responses, so that you don't need to jump and when I'm chairing. The minister and the team are capable of handling everything. So please, let's not do that. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think let me start with the issue that you cautioned around what Honourable Davies has raised. I equally want to request that we be cautious in not pulling the alarm. We are not sure whether Mr. Villegas' death is linked to SABC. We're waiting for law enforcement agencies to assist us. I think let's be rather sensitive. It's a very painful moment for a family that we need to give them space to grieve, equally not only to family but to colleagues that he worked with very closely over years. So I would appeal for that. Secondly, Chair, issues raised by Honorable Fanami, I think they're linked even what I'm going to respond to, even what Honorable Davis raised. Honorable Fanami, if you look at Section 9 of the Broadcasting Act, it even stipulates that we need to separate the financial statements of the commercial and the public broadcaster side. So I'm not so sure what is the confusion. I'm not being innovative. As I said, I'm following the Broadcasting Act on what I'm raising. Precisely the drafters were cognizant of the fact that at some point, because of the resources, SABC is going to have to compete commercially. Now that's why the fact that we have not implemented it, Chair, does not mean that it doesn't raise flags for us to look at. And maybe it goes to the question, maybe we must take a step back and ask ourselves, isn't it how we've been doing things part of the problem of making SABC not competitive enough? And maybe that's a discussion we must have, and saying perhaps what the Broadcasting Act envisaged and the fact that we have not implemented that could be part of the hindrance. I'm not saying it is, I'm saying that's one of the things that maybe we must start looking at. Could be one of the hindrance of making it unsustainable, because we've got to look at various areas why SABC continuously comes to this point, so that we are able to address it. So that's the issue for me. Hence, I spoke about the issues of commercially competitiveness and separating, because that's where it's derived from. And when I sit and look at it, I see there could be an issue that we need to look at. The second issue, again, if you look at, again, the Act, Section 8.2 of the Broadcasting Act, instructs the minister to initiate and determine the MOI. In that MOI, that's where you are clarifying the issues, you are dealing with the issues. So it's not innovation. It's what the Act prescribes for us to do, including the broadcasting the chat. So we've got to be able to do that. And I want to reiterate, Chair, I'm not looking at wanting to appoint executives. So it must be very clear, I'm seeking concurrence, that there must be a concurrence. Now, Honorable Vandam, I don't have history of losing cases, by the way, as a person. I don't. And that's why I always want to sit and look and get, is there a case? And I can tell you logically where we're sitting, we're looking at the loopholes. Actually, when you read the judge, I didn't want to go. You seem to get the sense that the judgment was rushed when you read it, actually. So there are issues there that we need to look at. So for me, it's a very, very, it's not about me, it's not about, because you don't deal with policies and legislation to suit a person. You deal with this thing for institutions. And the clarity is sought so that we can be very clear if the court is now instructing us to go and amend the SABC Act, because that's where it is. Is it instructing us to go and amend the SABC Act? Is the court instructing us to go and amend the Labor Relations Act, which I do not have authority to? It means Minister of Labor must come into the picture. So those are the issues that when you read the judgment, you need to be able to cognizantly look at and accept. So that's why maybe, Chair, the issue as well coming, maybe just to put as a suggestion, it might be something that the Portfolio Committee later can try, maybe have public hearings around the issues of separation of the commercial and public broadcaster for the SABC later. Chair, you know, I normally one person that takes emotions out of discussions and all that. Casting aspersions, Honorable Davis, on a person unfairly so, it's just not right, especially on a first meeting. you cynically seem to say you're not expecting anything much and close to Minister Mutambi. I'm not so sure what you're trying to insinuate in that, but I think it's not in the spirit of working together. When I'm here subjecting myself to oversight and accountability, treat me as Mamboloko Kensani Ngubani, not who I relate to or I am friends with. I'm an individual with my own intellectual capacity, suitable to take decisions, and that's why I can subject myself for accounting. So certain insinuation are a bit worrying. I don't think it's how we want to start working together in that manner. So we need to treat each other in the manner that it's almost you know, in a cordial way, in respecting each other properly. Chair, just to come to, I think Honorable Van Dam raises the issue that there's no sense of alarm and all that. There is what we are tabling as turnaround. I would have a problem if I'm to have dramatic presentation. There's burning, I would have a problem, because then you are very clear that you don't have managers once something like that happen. Part of strategic leadership is to be able to take things, look at them, and apply your mind cognitively and say, this is how we're going to do it. And I think in the presentation, that's what we are doing. To say, we acknowledge this is where the problems are. We acknowledge this is where the challenges. We were asked to come and present for Q1, but we've gone extensively and said, these are the issues that have been raised by the Portfolio Committee. These are the issues that have been raised by the Auditor General. It wasn't asked from there, but we are saying, this is what has been raised, this is what we are doing about it. But equally, taking cognizance of where we are, that's why I explained about the turnaround, the issue of the bill, the government guarantee, where we are in terms of the issues. Equally, Honorable Member, there are certain things we are not going to go into detail here. For example, you are asking to want to know who are the people in a process, a recruitment process. You can't. It's not complete. When it's complete, you'll be reported. But you can't want to fiddle, get yourself in between the recruitment process. I don't. Because it makes us eligible, all of us at the end, to have an objective view because you have muddled in between the process. No, asking to be part of a process. You see, when a process is not yet completed, you start asking the names. The individuals themselves have not even been told that either you are. Because a process says, if you have done HR properly, a process says in a recruitment, you advertise, you shortlist, you interview, then there's a recommendation. And then there's an offer given to an individual. After an offer is given, an individual still has the right to accept or decline. Until that process is finished, you can't come and start naming people's names here. People are sitting in particular positions where they are employed. You want to compromise where they are sitting because somebody already says, no, you have applied a position, you are likely to be employed somewhere. You can't. For one way or the other, they might even not have disclosed to their immediate supervisor. Now you're already explaining their names in public. So, Chair, I'm saying the process of appointment of the 3 executives will be communicated once it's completed to me as well and to the committee. We'll do that. And if there are questions about how the process has been done, we'll explain that once the process has been done. The other issue that I want to explain, Chair, is...
Thanks, Chair. I didn't actually...
Honorable Van Dam, you say there is a point of order.
A point of order, yes. I didn't actually ask the Minister for an update on the appointment of the top 3 executives. I asked the SABC Board Chair. Because in the first place, she's not even supposed to be involved in that process at all. So I don't know how she's giving this update in the first place. I've asked the SABC Board Chair about an update on that, and I'm pretty sure he can speak for himself.
Honorable Minister.
That Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just...
I don't think she's assisting the committee, really. No, but I don't think you are assisting the committee. the department has a minister, and for now, Minister Kubai. No, I'm saying, can you allow the minister to conclude? There is a board, but there is also a political head. That's my understanding. Can you allow her to finish? And at the correct moment, if she's not satisfied with the response, she will then come in. It will be wrong for her to interject while she's trying to clarify the issues that we have raised.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we won't conclude this meeting very properly. So.
Men in this committee.
You see,
we asked 2 questions to 2 women, and they feel they must speak on their behalf. They're more than capable of speaking for themselves. Can they allow them to answer?
Just let the meeting proceed smoothly, Honorable Van Dam, and then come back if you have issues. Because, you know, this jumping up and down when the meeting is proceeding, I don't think is correct. Thanks, Honorable Said, because it's something that I've been saying ever since the meeting started. Interjections, they don't assist the meeting. You have time to come back and say, on this matter, these are the problems that I have as a participant in the meeting. Honorable Mbinda, when the minister is done with the responses, because I omitted you, so that if you have something to raise, then you can raise. Proceed, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Maybe clarity, Chair. In terms of Parliament rules, as Minister of Communication, I'm the one who tables even SABC board annual plans and SABC annual performance plans, reports. So if honorable members, I think that's where you must start. If you don't want the minister to account, and because you must start there, Chair, to remove the minister, because I think in terms of the rules and the reports and in terms of the constitution, there is an executive authority. And I'm that executive authority, honorable member. And I would account to Parliament in terms of the performance of an entity that is falling within my portfolio. Now, Chair, coming to the issues that has been raised, one of the issues in terms of the Deputy Chair, I am going to request that, because you can't subject one person to an interrogation. If there's questions to all members of the board, it must be fairly doing so. Let me just explain in the process. Once the board is appointed, we request them to submit declarations where they are declaring whether there's conflict of interest. So I have requested the chair of the board to ensure that all members of the board submit declarations. And I would want to request, Chair, knowing that the deputy chair of the board is here, and equally she can respond, but for subject and for being fair to her, I'm requesting that she should not be subjected to those questions. I know she would be willing to answer, but I don't think it's fair. Let's allow all board members, and I want to request, Chair, that she is not allowed to respond. Let's allow, if there are conflicts, we will bring them to the attention of the portfolio committee so that it's a process. We've asked all of them to submit reports to declare if there are conflict. And if there are any once that process has been done, then we'll come back to the committee for all the board members. Chair, again, you've, Honorable Galagwa suggested that you would want to meet with the board, the entire board. Can I appeal, if that is to happen, in light of the financial constraints of SABC, that the portfolio committee carry the costs? Because the board is big. That's one of the issues, Chair. We tried to manage it coming here as well. I mean, it doesn't send a message well to even the employees, where you are saying we are constrained financially, but employees see us or the board and executive flying, you know, all over, they can raise it as a concern, Chair. On the issue of, I think there's issues that are raised around TV licenses. From the department, we've requested SABC to look at collection strategy, and the interim board did some work there, and I think the team can share. But I think one of the things that, Chair, we would like to look at, there are various countries that we can learn from that has experiences around your UK, Finland, Sweden, Germany, that are doing quite well around TV licenses. But one of the things, if you are to look at the figures around households that are owning TV licenses, Chair, you have almost 14 million. If all are to pay TV licenses, SABC ordinarily would be in a good space financially. But you've got to remember that out of that, you have senior citizens that are, how do you call, they get discount for the licenses. So it reduces the amount. But I think broadly, we've asked them to relook at the strategy. There's been some good numbers that are coming up from the time the interim board came in terms of collection. It's showing some positive stream. So if we can see a lot of people coming through and also honorable members encouraging payments of TV license so that we can see the revenue and getting what we want to see out of the SABC, but equally working with the SABC and the broadcaster just to see a public broadcast, because we do take cognizance that SABC's mandate is to majority of South Africans without the paying side. People who cannot afford to pay for TV must have access, because this is a platform to disseminate information. This is a platform to be able to assist people with understanding, even issues of democracy, information, because as government as well, we utilize that platform to be able to communicate with the public. So it needs to be available to majority, if not 100% of our population. And that's why the DTT process is very important. Challenges around that, I think the team will explain on the DTT part. It's mainly around finances, because work that needs to happen on SABC, studio ready, content issues, so it needs resources to be funded for them to be able to expand that. But I think they can go into detail, and that's why some of the issues that we're dealing with Treasury is to try and ensure that some of this are funded properly, either through normal budgeting process where we get allocations so that we can deal with that. But I think broadly around the DTT, we really want to see the digital migration moving. But SABC has a part in terms of ensuring not only that the channels are available, but the issue of content, addressing that we don't end up with channels that are many and we don't have content. But there's many people who are available out there who've been working around the clock to ensure that content is there. Now SABC will need money to be able to carry that content over. I think I've tried to answer quite what I think would need from my side as a shareholder to respond to, and I'll leave the others to the team led by the chair. Thanks.
Deputy Minister, and then Honorable Mbinda.
Thank you, Chairperson. I thought that I was like on holiday in this meeting. I'll allow the minister to deal with the questions in the committee because it's her first time. Few clarities which I want to provide, Chair, for Honorable Van Dam and her colleague. One, commercially sensitive information. The test is not whether Honorable Van Dam, one loses a market share or market value. Commercially sensitive information means trade and business. You would know better because that's your environment. Information that belongs to a firm, and it has a particular economic value. Now, SABC is not just a public broadcaster. Section 2K of the Act itself, it has three sectors or sections that it refers to in terms of broadcasting, it's community broadcasting, it's commercial broadcasting, and public broadcasting. Now, it is conceivable that the SABC plays a different segment of the broadcasting itself. Now, when we speak of these different aspects, I want to align myself with what Honorable Kalako said. We should not conflict issues. We need to understand the SABC before we could utter such emotional utterances when we are in the portfolio. Now, you speak about a declaratory judgment. I don't understand where it comes in, Chairperson, because this is just a typical request when a party is threatened with a lawsuit, and we are not doing that as the ministry. It's something very different that we are doing. We are challenging the judgment. Whether the SABC wants to oppose it or it's their baby. The ball is in their court. We are filed already. We are ready for to challenge the judgment itself. So it's better if you go and read the judgment so that you are familiar with the certain aspects that are there. We will read it differently anyway because our interests are different. So we must just, live with that. That our interests are different on this particular issue, and we are not going to be persuaded by your good selves who are proceeding with it. Thank you.
Anything? That's the only president in the House, Honorable Mbenda. There is no other president in this room.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. Sorry, yeah. No, Chair, maybe it's because I have not been around. And now I could see now this battle of the titans. So I just felt that at least I need to intervene, from, it looks like now we are no more longer a committee that we used to be. I don't know what has gone wrong. But to be honest with you, for me, the presentation that we have just received, obviously it says a lot. I know we normally want to get tempted, with the operational issues. That's the problem that we have as the committee. So that is why sometimes we will dig deep and then look for details. Because, the board chair explained everything that they have been there for the past 2 weeks, and now they have gone through the induction, and then now at least they understand what is expected of them. For me, that was enough. Even when the explanation, more especially about the industrial action, that it has ended, because that's all what I wanted to hear from my side, that it has ended. And then he went further to say there is a framework in place to deal with the issue of the industrial action. That means they are working on it. Obviously, as the committee would love to see stability in that entity, but the fact that now, because he cannot make empty promises, labor people are very unpredictable. Otherwise, if he comes here and then he tells us everything now, then tomorrow we'll ask him why, because this is what you said. But in a nutshell, Chair, I did not expect a lot today because it's like their first time. And I know that there was a board, and they have handed over, but now we are starting this era. So let's just give them a chance just to do what they are saying. They know what is expected of them. All other issues about the declaratory. I'm not a lawyer about the declaratory orders and so forth. I don't want to get that. My problem, Chair, is that I have not even seen the judgment. So sometimes just to speak or to shoot, from the hips, it is really sometimes wrong. But as a so-called neutral person here, I would also urge, my other honorable members that really we must not suspect people, this thing of casting aspersions and all those things, let's give people an opportunity and then we deal with them when that time comes. It doesn't matter how much we know, but let's give the minister, the new minister, an opportunity, and then at the appropriate time, then we will obviously deal with whatever friendship that she has with whoever, if that is wrong. So at least let's work now as we used to do as a committee, and we have taken SABC to this far, and it's because of the collective effort, collective work, as the honorable members. So we must not create these unnecessary other things. But we are happy. I am happy from my side. I must talk about myself. But we will see as the time goes on, because I know the interim body did quite a lot of work. And then what you were here to do is just to give us some guidelines of what is it that maybe you intend doing going forward. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Honorable Ben. Yes, it's a new trend. The committee has been handling issues factually, with no particular perceptions and all that. So it's new. And I'm happy that members are handling that, because I think we need to handle it as a committee so that we don't get into that. I know it's 2017, at the end of 2017. And therefore, iminyaka hamba for us to get to the big year of 2019. Thank you very much, Minister, Deputy Dan, then the Chair of the Board.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. In terms of, there's quite a number of questions that we asked, and a lot of those questions have already been answered. For the benefit of my colleagues that I have here, I'm also going to ask them to sort of add or answer some of the questions. Specifically on the SIU report that I touched on, you will understand, honorable members, that the SIU is a sensitive process that we're going through. It's the investigation, the analysis, for them to give us a conclusive report at the end. I'm not at liberty in this platform to start diverging the details on what is happening. But suffice to say, we've put pressure on them in terms of timing, that the work they're doing is so critical for what we need to do for the SABC. So we've requested them to accelerate the speed at which they're doing the work that they're doing, of course, without compromising the quality and the procedure of what they need to do. And they've given us comfort that they are working hard at it, and at the right time, they will give us enough information for us to pursue whatever activities or processes need to be pursued based on their findings. But really beyond that, I would want you to respect the process and to allow the SIU to continue their work without us publicizing the preliminary findings that they are doing, because that can be blown out of proportion. That's the first thing. And I would want us to leave it there on the SIU report. On the issue of the death of the head of legal services, it is a sensitive matter. The family has lost a son, the country has lost a person, and SABC has lost a colleague. I wouldn't want us to start speculating on a lot of things, because that will also be blown out of proportion. Let's allow the law enforcement agencies to do what they need to do. But there is a question that was asked: how are you creating an environment where people within the SABC are assured, reassured that they are, one, protected, and they can continue participating in the process that we're going through? as a board, we'll be deliberating on that, but in the interim, what we've done, we've visited the family, we've called on the help of psychologists, counselors, to come engage with the department, legal services department, which he was leading. So that work is being done just to reassure people and to make sure that we give them the support that they need. But beyond that, based on the findings from the law enforcement agencies, we'll then be able to know what really is at the core of his death. And only then we can be able to put systems in place, because for now, it will still be speculations. There was a question around what are you doing with the strike? I think that's been covered. Really, I wouldn't want to be making commitments here about the strike. There is a framework. We've invited trade unions to engage within that framework. There is a team that has been set up by the board working with the executive team to engage with the trade unions. That's a process, and really, I cannot come here and then start negotiating in Parliament matters of labor that needs to be negotiated with trade unions in the right platform. I'm going to ask the acting CEO to tackle some of the questions.
Thank you, Board Chair. I will start with the editorial policy. And once again, we do apologize that we didn't include it in here, but this was about Q1. So in the past quarter, which was Q2, we've gone extensively throughout the provinces. We've visited 3 towns per province. We've collated the information. Where we are now is reviewing all those submissions, both online and the verbal submissions that we had. And we are going to then be reiterating the process and going back to the provinces to then present the information that was given to us. Our target is that by February 2018, we will then be taking it to board for approval so that it can then roll out and go to ICASA before April for us to then implement it in the new fiscal. Then there was a question that was also asked about what plans do we have in place. Yes, we do have contingencies in place to ensure that there will be continuity in the event that there is any labor action. Then there was a question from Honorable Van Dam about the PSL rights. Yes, we are going to be responding. It is for a 5-year term. We do know that we'll have challenges, but we are definitely going to be responding, and we can assure South Africans that we'll be vying for those rights. Then there was an issue around TV licenses in terms of what it is that we're doing extraordinary. What we have done with TV licenses, we have essentially, in the short term, reversed some decisions, and we are now doing what we had always been doing in terms of the collections. And we must say that in the past 3 months, it's bearing fruit in the sense that we are seeing quite a healthy increase in the numbers. And then I think on the last issue of the bonus, I'm glad that you raised it because it gives us an opportunity to clear the air once and for all. We were here to present the annual financial statements, and I think it was very clear that the money that's being referred to is not for this fiscal, but I think it's best that I give over to the CFO to take you through how those bonuses are actually arrived at.
Thank you, Chair and Board Chair. Just on the bonus itself, SABC Commercial Enterprises has got an incentive scheme which is aimed at incentivizing staff, managers, GMs, and executives who work in that division. So that division is about 300 employees who participate in the scheme. So the way the scheme is structured is that at the beginning of the year, we decide what the annual target is that we're chasing, which is the commercial target. And in that, then what we do is then we base the actual payment. So on a monthly basis, that target gets rolled out in terms of what we're chasing on a monthly basis. So the team itself, the full team of 300 employees gets incentivized for meeting the target. And there's a formula that we use as well to calculate to calculate the overperformance that has to be paid out. So this is clearly, how the market operates in terms of other broadcasters as well. And the bonus that is reflected there is actually an overlap of the 2014-2015 fiscal, which was a good year in performance for commercial enterprises. So I think just in a nutshell, that is an incentive commission scheme that is paid to 300 employees, including the executive that heads the division. So she was heading the division at the time. So the scheme itself is principled around the economic value added. So what it looks at, we set a target, and then for any excess that is brought back, to the business, we use a formula that then calculates what should be paid out, to each employee, and that's all. Thanks.
Chair, I've asked my deputy to also comment.
On the report?
Yes.
Not on the question that relates to her.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Committee, Minister, Board Chairperson and colleagues, honourable members. I think that the overall sense from the first quarter report is that we still face a serious crisis. In fact, that we face a serious crisis, and I think that that the board, when it had its first meeting and the handover as well as its induction, was very mindful that we are inheriting an organisation in crisis on a whole range of different levels, the financial crisis, that we need to address the issues with regards to staffing, including at the top level, as well as the question about the digital migration and what we need to do around those issues. And it's for that reason why the chairperson the board chairperson in his introduction pointed towards those different priorities. For example, on the issue of the digital migration, but also the more generally what the SABC do with regards to new media, the board has for the first time established a committee that looks specifically at technology as well as the digital space of the board, so that we are able to focus this and make sure that we as a board, that we're able to monitor what the executives are doing and what the company is doing in terms of this particular area, because the problem has been that it has been dispersed, there has been stops and starts, and we need to make sure that we get it on track and in a sense play catch up in this area. Some of the other issues that were raised, the board also looked at in some of its first engagements, this question about the public and commercial aspects of the SABC. And in particular to look at how do we see whether it's possible, or how do we cost the public mandate? What are the elements of that public mandate, whether it's education, whether it is national events, etc., so that we have a much better sense of what are we talking about when we're talking about that we want to engage with government to increase beyond the 3% that we're getting at the moment in government grants. What exactly are we talking about? So it's not just saying to government that we want to increase it, but it should be fairly specific in terms of what we need to do. And we're also looking at those issues. I'm sure that Mr. Mattison will be able to talk about the TV licenses issues. But on the financial situation, there's, on the one hand, that we have to look at the questions about our expenses. How do we keep it under control, and how do we make sure that you build an institution that's viable in the long term? And that is something that we are discussing, but also to look at managing the immediate crisis, and hence the sort of difficulty that we face in the wage negotiations, where you have a financial crisis, but at the same time we need to look at wage demands that's coming from workers. In addition to that, we need to look at TV licenses, we need to look at sponsorships, as the members has asked, we have to look at advertising, but we also need to look at other forms of how do we make sure that you build a sustainable public broadcaster. And so it's really not business as usual. I can assure all of the members, the sense from the board is there is a sense of urgency. There are some deep-seated issues that we need to address, that the work that the interim board has done was to address very specific issues, but that we need to now look at the broadcaster and see how do we make sure that we don't come back in 5 years' time or 3 years' time and we're back where we started, to put it into on a sustainable way forward. I think that those are the attitudes of the new board. Of course, we welcome the suggestion from the member Calico that there should be an engagement between the whole board and the portfolio committee where we can engage in a bit more details about some of these issues in terms of our views about what should go into a turnaround strategies, what are the priorities. And we look forward to it. With regards to the issues that was raised to me, I stand guided by the committee chair whether I should answer or not.
You won't go to the personal questions that was raised. Anything else? I think
we can follow up. We've answered the questions.
Yeah,
I couldn't pick up.
The questions are responded to. Can I go back to members? Honorable Van Dam, Honorable Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, yes, as Honorable Minda said, we used to get along as a committee. We used to do our job without fear, without favor. I understand that there's a conference coming up in December, and perhaps people have their preferred candidates, and perhaps there's been pressure applied about the way this committee has been doing its job without fear or favor. Regardless of what it is, we can only speculate. I want to make it clear that Honorable Davis and I are not members of the ANC. We will not be dictated to about which questions we should ask. We will not be patronized about the questions we ask. We are going to do our job without fear and without favor. So let that be very clear. Second point, perhaps our interests are different, as the Deputy Minister said. Our interest here is, as elected members of Parliament, to conduct oversight, to demand answers, and perhaps the interests are different. Maybe the interest is to recapture the SABC, as has been speculation out there. So maybe the interests are different. And I also would like to tell the Deputy Minister to look up what a declaratory order is. It is used when there's an issue in a court judgment that is not clear and you want the court to clarify it. So our suggestion was that the minister follow that route instead of going through an appeal. But if she decides to go through that route instead, she can go through that route, and I can almost 100% guarantee that that would be another court case they're going to lose, as government always does. And I'm also very disappointed in that the Deputy Chair didn't answer our question. I think it goes to the core of what the problem is at the SABC. The Minister says the problem at the SABC is because it's not competitive enough, which is not true. The reason why the SABC is in this problems that it's because of cadre deployment, it's because of corruption, it's because of unqualified people being appointed to positions. It is not because the SABC is not competitive enough. It has 75% share in the radio market. It's absolutely ludicrous to suggest that the SABC is not competitive enough. As my colleague just remarked, it's actually kind of a monopoly. So let's not be under illusion of that. There was a question that wasn't answered by the chair. I requested, not the minister, the chair, I requested an update on the process about appointing the top 3 executives. You do not report to the Minister of Communications as the board. You report to the National Assembly. Read the Broadcasting Act. So I'm asking you here now, as a representative of the body to which you account, do not be pressured and intimidated by the minister. Do not listen to her when she tells you whether you should answer questions or not, as she did to the Deputy Chair. I'm asking you a question. What is the update on the appointment of the top 3 executives? The last information we had from the minister was that she didn't like the people who had been nominated by the interim board. Where to from here? That's what I'm requesting, and I'm requesting it from you.
Next, Honorable Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was fascinating that the Minister took it upon herself to give us a progress report on the appointment of the 3 executives, considering that the High Court has ruled that she has no locus standi or no role to play, no legal role to play in that appointment. So it's very interesting to see how close she is to that appointment, despite the High Court ruling. But I did ask a very, very specific question to the chairperson of the board, and I asked him, is he going to defend the SABC's independence from the minister's desire to interfere with the appointments that I just mentioned? In other words, is the SABC going to oppose the minister's application to appeal the High Court judgment? I asked that very crisply and clearly. I'm not sure if you heard me, Chairperson, but I need you to answer that question. I need you to demonstrate to us that the SABC board has not been captured by the minister and by the government, and that you are independent. Please demonstrate your independence to us today. Thank you.
Do you have questions, members? Honorable Tsede?
My take is that there are no issues to be responded to at this stage, really. We're just wasting our time here. Can I request you to provide guidance, Chair, and close this meeting? If honorable members do not have follow-ups to make, let them say so. Because I don't see new issues that are coming now, over and above the issues that we have raised earlier. And I really request you, Chair, to provide guidance. If there are no issues, let's close this meeting.
Honorable Machoba? No, Tete Mbokwen.
Chair, I'm supporting my colleague next to me because there's no relevant question now, Chair. Thanks,
Honorable Kalago?
No, Chair, I thought we still have some other items. But, Chair, it must be clear to everybody here that as ANC, we're not interested in telling anyone what to do, how to think in this parliament and this committee in particular, especially members of other parties. If some of the people, they have that tendency or come from that background, it's not us. So that must be clear. And secondly, Chair, still, if DA is on its, rolling mode to capture SABC, they must know that we see that. They pointed to the other side. We know all the shenanigans they are doing, quietly, in destabilizing SABC. I think it's time that they must be told that. Maybe they think we don't know that. It's a pity, Honorable President Binda, you come at a time when I think really in this committee, if DA thinks they can come and bulldoze ANC, they must forget. Completely, they must forget. And also, I want to reiterate, Minister, you are on the correct path. Test that judgment. There's no, DA wants to create a state of lawlessness in the ANC government because they want to preach what they preach, that you don't have a control. Test that. There's no way that you can have a board, and now they are distorting and creating an impression that you report. If you want to work with your board chair and your board, you want to work smoothly with the department, with the minister, follow all the prescripts of that, which are articulated in Act. They are articulated, Companies Act, they are articulated even. in the Memorandum of Incorporation and SABC Charter. So, you know, they always want to create this impression. So if you want to work, they are not, in fact, don't think they are in your interest. They want you to collapse. They don't have that interest. They want SABC to collapse. So don't take such, follow the law, follow the act. The law to them is law when it suits them. Courts are courts to them when they suit them. So I think, Chair, that must be actually a clear thing, and we are not going to tolerate that. We are not going to be tolerant of that at all as ANC. They must know they are not going to come here and want to dictate and tell us what to do on things which we know they are wrong. We have fought for this board to be changed and we are fighting. In fact, ANC, we have been in the lead to make sure that what is happening in that SABC is corrected without favor, without any fear. So if they are already excited, they must save their energy for 2019. If they're already excited for elections now, they must save it for 2019.
Machop, now you are ready.
I think I miss a very important. As you know, we know that this is the last presentation from the departments. I want to say to them, they must go back to work for their good work. Thank you for the good work. Indeed, in their work is in the reflection of our ruling party. I think this hostility conduct of the DA, they must ignore about them because, you know, these people, national-wise, there has a lot of cases, unnecessary cases, talking for everything. You can go around this nation to those provinces. They open the cases all the time. You cannot take them as a serious party. They have that chair. In course, I can say that mentality of the apartheid system is still existing to their mind. So thank you very much, Minister and Deputy Minister and the department. Go back and have a good and nice Christmas. See you, next year.
Thank you very much, Honorable Machop. Members, we are going to, we are left with one item now. But what I want to say, just for a moment, I know you want to have the last word. Members, you know, before the end of term of the interim board, the 6 months, all of us in this committee, we were fully behind the interim board, and all the time we're saying they are doing excellent work as a collective, the 5 of them. This is what we've been saying all the time until we advertised for the permanent board. And then we started then to say, this one is like this one is, must not come back to the board. Remember, members of the committee. So all of a sudden, it was like there are individuals in the interim board who are not accepted by members of the committee. I don't think it was fair, because all of us have been saying throughout the 6 months, excellent work and all of that. Now at the end, we pointed fingers to particular. Is the right of any member to say that? to change from the 6 months position that we have taken, because it was during the time of the appointment of the new board. Maybe those things we are still, as individual members, we are still there. But we have an 11-member board now. We have an 11-member board, short of one, because the 12th resigned. And this board is the board all of us, or the majority of us, said in the National Assembly, the president must appoint, or we recommend to the president to appoint the 12. But now we are in a different space. Of course, we are in a different space even in the National Assembly. So we'll have to leave to accept that we have a board now of 11 members. We'll have to set up a process, members, at a particular stage to fill the space of the 12th member of the board. So at some stage, we'll have to discuss as to, because there is a vacancy now, what do we do? We're still trying to get the assistance, the advice on that one. But the vacancy is there. We need to, a vacancy need to be declared, and we take it forward so that we have a 12-member board. So I'm saying for the committee, that is the issue we must finalize quite urgently, so that we don't come back to this thing again of 11-member board. So that's one thing, members, that we need to deal with, maybe in the next meeting of Tuesday. And again, I assure you that we are going to discuss in the next meetings. We are going to discuss the ICASA and the FPB. It will come to you when it's processed properly. Again, two hands. Do you know that it's 1:10 now? And let me finish talking. It's 12:10 now. We're supposed to break for lunch at 1:30 and rush to the house after that. We have minutes. You must decide whether we allow the discussion further, and which minutes are they? Are they June minutes? We have June minutes that we are supposed to dispose of. So the more we engage on other matters, we delay the administration part of it. Honorable Van Dam, you see?
Thanks, Chair.
Wait, Honorable Van Dam, Honorable Davis, Machoba, and Honorable Kalako.
Thanks, Chair. Honorable Davis and I asked some pretty clear questions directed to the board chair. Now, I'd like it very clear what is going to happen now. The 3 members said our questions shouldn't be answered. So is it your ruling then that the chairperson of the board, who according to the law accounts to Parliament, must not answer his questions that we have asked? Is that what's going to happen? Is that your ruling? Can that be very clear? Because they can't decide for themselves what must happen. We're 2 members of this committee. We've asked 2 questions. We've asked it to the board chair. I'd also like for him to be given an opportunity to say whether he'd like to answer or not. These 3 members cannot decide, 1, which questions we ask, and 2, whether guests here must answer questions or not. It's not their job to answer that. So can we get answers to our questions? And then can the chairperson be given the opportunity to answer? We cannot be silenced by 3 members of the majority. We are rightful members of this committee. We'd like our answer.
Thank you very much, Honorable Davis.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to underscore the importance of the question that I asked twice and has still gone unanswered by the chairperson of the board. I don't know if I need to explain it again, just to make it clear what's at stake here. But on the one hand, you have a minister who... Sorry, let me start again. On the one hand, you have a judgment which protects the right of the SABC to make executive appointments. It's giving you, as the SABC board, the independence and the power to make those appointments. On the other hand, you have a minister who wants to now turn back the clock and interfere with those appointments, and as such, she is now appealing that judgment. The question to you is, are you going to stand up to the minister who wants to take away your rights and powers as decided by the courts? Are you going to oppose her application to appeal the judgment? It's a very simple question and it needs an answer.
Honorable Machoba.
Chair, I'm proposing the closure. Chair.
Honorable Tsedi.
You see, Honorable Chair, the two honorable members are creating problems because the question that they're asking the board to deal with is the very same question on the judgment. Now they're directing the question to wrong people. That question does not belong to the board. It's a question that is specifically relevant to the ministry. There is a minister, there is a deputy minister, and they've clarified this particular aspect. And if they can't convince the other honorable members of the board, of the committee, to convince the ministry to review a decision, it's unfortunate. We're saying we support the ministry, let them go on, challenge the judgment, depending on whatever outcome we'll arrive at, then we'll take it from there. So all I'm saying is that they're directing a question to the board which belongs to the ministry. It's not the judgment. And I really have a problem, Chair, in us allowing this meeting to proceed in that position.
We are going to close this matter just now. Honorable Kala.
No, Chair, I was going to say really this was a matter which was supposed to be decided by you as a chair. It's just that you have given us a leeway. But in any case, again, my view very differently, strongly different with those two members. It's not even our call to tell the minister whether to appeal or not as this parliament. We can have our opinions, but there's no way that we'll sit and instruct. In fact, theirs is actual one to instruct the ministry not to appeal when it feels it had to clear certain issues around there. It's not our call at all. So I don't know why we'll be going around discussing this issue.
You know, comrades, the minister was very clear on this when she explained, because I don't want you to respond anymore, Minister. I was very clear on this. There is a decision taken by the executive authority to deal with the matter that affects the case. And maybe let's allow that. In fact, let us allow that to take its course and don't seek to change that decision in the committee. It doesn't belong to us. Honorable Kalago is right. Honorable Davis, I'm not going to allow hands on this matter anymore.
Chairperson, I just want to say, I'm not asking the minister a question. I'm not interested in the minister's. I'm not interested in the minister's appeal. I'm interested in the position of the SABC board, which is separate from the ministry.
Do you understand?
I'm not interested in what the minister's got to say on this. She's made her decision. I don't want to change that. I want to know from the SABC board chair, are they going to oppose the minister's appeal application or not? It's a very simple question.
I have ruled that they are not going to do that. Can we take
You do not have the right to
members?
stop the SABC board from speaking in this meeting. You do not have that right. They're an independent board and they account to Parliament. You cannot close down the SABC board from speaking. Your job is to give them the opportunity to respond to whatever is asked by the committee. You cannot close it down. It's an independent body.
Are you done? Are you done? Are you done with your contribution? Honorable Davis, are you done?
Chair, would you like me to put the question again to the SABC board?
No, I'm not saying are you done with what
Okay.
you are saying.
Let me put the question to him again.
No, I'm not. The question you have posed, are you done with posing the question?
I've posed the question, now I'm waiting for the answer.
That's right. Honourable members, will go to the next item, which are the minutes. Do we have minutes? There are minutes of the. There are minutes of the 9th, June 13th, June 20th, June. Can we do this quickly? Do you have the minutes? I want to get force. This is not the time to circulate minutes. Oh, 9, 13, and 20. Can you go to the meeting? Deputy Minister, are you staging a walkout? Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. You are excused, Honourable Minister. Can you go to minutes of the 9th, page 1? Page 2, very short minutes. Page 3, Honourable Tsedi, on page. Minutes of the 9th. Phumani ningasilibazisi.
No, I just wanted to suggest that we adopt the minutes.
Thank you very much, Honourable Machoba. Are you leaving the meeting, Honourable Fonda? Oh. Adopted. Minutes of the 13th. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Very old minutes. Page 4. And page 5. Anything? Move adoption. Machoba, on. Use your mic. Use your mic.
I'm adopting the minutes, Chair. I'm moving.
Adoption. Honourable Kalago.
Support, Chair.
Supporting the adoption of minutes of the 19th, of the 13th, I'm sorry. 20th, the last set of minutes, page 1, page 2, and page 3.
I'm moving, Chair, for the adoption.
Honourable Seti is moving the adoption of the minutes of the 20th. Honourable. Yes.
I'm supporting, Chair.
Don't even look at Honourable Mbinda, he was not here. Thank you very much, members. Minutes, seconded by? Machoba, ne? Okay. That's it? I'm told there is, okay. I'm told there is lunch. Say it.
Max Building Restaurant, but on your left, as you walk into Max, on your left, don't go right. There's one on your left-hand side.
The bar?
The bar.
Okay. Thank you very much, members. The meeting is adjourned.
I didn't want to say the bar.
Yeah, at the bar.